Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Thursday. That sounds weird. It's not Friday. Back at it doing live readings on the channel. If you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up, say hello in the chat, and let me know where you guys are tuning in from. We're at the top of the month, so welcome to July. So this is going to be the very first live session we're going to be doing on the channel. Usually I'm here on Fridays, but tomorrow's a holiday, so I figured we'd move it. To those of you guys who participated in the poll, thank you so much for giving me your feedback, and I'm glad to be here. So it's live on July 3rd, 2025. So if you guys are watching this on Friday or Saturday, I'm no longer live. Please don't send any money for readings, otherwise you'll be refunded. But you can catch me here next Friday. I'll be here at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be doing tarot readings. We're here every other week, so if you guys want to catch me on a future astrology live, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this stream. Consider sharing it out. Click that bell button below. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays, and also Sundays using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. We've got a number of people who are already in the queue, so thank you guys for your patience. We take the readings in the order that we receive them, and we start off with our level 3 members first. So I know there might be some new people here. So basically I have memberships on my channel. You guys may or may not know. Definitely check out my channel memberships page on my YouTube channel. Basically we created this so that way you guys can support me as a full-time content creator. I'm here, like I said, 4 days a week. And if you want to support my work as a full-time creator, you can by joining one of the levels. Level 1 is just going to support me if you guys like my videos. I do long form format. I also teach astrology along the way and talk about current events. We've got very lengthy monthly horoscopes, new and full moon reports, and the occasional free webinar that we put on the channel. So you guys can support me level 1 or level 2. You're going to get a shout out from me at the top of the month. We're actually going to do that in just a minute. And then level 3, you get to do all of those things, but you get a reading from me once a month. So that's kind of the perk of being a level 3 member. You're going to be guaranteed a reading. You don't have to wait in line. We take our level 3 members first, and you can choose if you want a tarot or an astrology reading. So it's a really great deal. It's a good investment if you want to get a reading once a month and kind of stay in touch with me. So we'll say thank you to all of our level 2 and 3 members who have been, some of you guys have been a member for like almost 2 years. So it's kind of crazy. But people like Stephanie Carrillo, we've got Sarah, Golden Sun, Maria, Coco, Angie, Rosie, Spirited Door, Katie, Janie Doan, Contessa of the Divine, Natalie, La Morena, Ashley Johnson, Janet, Kadia, Jess, Lisa MC4, Shay, Salty Mama, Soul Tribe, Smoky Brown Eyes, Dorothy, Claire, Laverne, Darlene, Christine, Erica, Grow Up Together, Victoria Rusk, Deanna, Sharon Grant, Emma, Taliba, and Susan Wexler. Thank you guys so much for supporting my work. I appreciate you. And we're going to kind of keep things moving. So if this is the first time that you've been on my channel, to get a reading, it's really simple. You scan this QR code right here. It's going to take you directly to my PayPal. We are charging $55 US for one astrology related question. Please, please, please make sure that you put in your information. So I need to know the exact location, date, and time. Please spell out the month because we do have people who are international. We do things a little different with like the date here in the United States compared to Europe. And let me know your one specific question. So it can be something pertaining to a timing question. You can have a question in regards to an upcoming transit. Certainly, there's a lot going on this month. Saturn and Neptune will both retrograde. Uranus is going into Gemini. We have got a up-and-coming full moon in Capricorn next week. Mercury retrograde in Leo. It's going to be kind of colorful as well. So there's definitely a lot of things to ask about. Or if you have a specific question or a Synastry question, I'm happy to answer those questions for you guys as well. So in terms of who we already have in the queue, it looks like for the level 3 members, I've got Coco and also Sharon. And I saw your message, Sharon. We do not do Synastry for level 3. So you guys are more than welcome if you are a member. If you want to get a Synastry, you just have to send the $30 difference for that particular reading. And I'm happy to answer your question. Otherwise, I can just answer a question in regards to your transits. So just let me know if you're still here. And we've got also Pearl, Matt, looks like Mike and Mary, It looks like a couple people popped in here. Bargain bags for Britney, Astrid. All of you guys kind of popped in here. So I will add you guys as we kind of go through. So you'll hear me call a couple names in advance. That's just to let you know that your reading is coming up. Sometimes these get kind of busy. So if you guys get in and you get a reading, but you have to wait and you can't hang out and wait, we're going to leave this video up on YouTube. You can come back to this and watch it at a later date if you would like to. All you have to do is just kind of scan ahead until you see your chart, and it'll have your name on the top left-hand corner of the chart. So you can come back to me, feedback, let me know what happens with your reading. People do that sometimes like months down the road, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys. So with that being said, we're gonna get started with our level 3 people. So Aaron, I saw you're in there, I got you. What's up, Ari? Thank you, I'll add you to my list. What's up, Deanna? She says, I'm here cashing in, so I'll put you on my list as well. And we'll take Coco, Sharon, and Deanna, although I have not heard back from Sharon yet. So let me know if you want me to do a synastry for you, or if you have a particular question about your chart. I might actually wait until I hear from Sharon, because I don't want to do that unless I know that's what she wants. Happy 4th of July to those of you guys who are celebrating here in the States. Tomorrow, that's why we're not doing the live readings. You guys are all probably partying. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna start with Coco, AKA Kara, and we're gonna be looking at a synastry reading between you and Gomez. So let me pull up your question here. Coco says, here's my chart. So the December 1st, 89, Pisces rising, Sun in Sag, and your moon is in Capricorn. And we're taking a look at Gomez, who's born June 29th, 1989 at 4:52 p.m. Let me change that time in La Mesa, although one minute isn't going to make that much of a difference, but I want to be exact. And it looks like we're going to be taking a look at your guys' synastry together. And she says, this man and I are still in each other's orbit. I was thinking about being mostly for fun and lust, but definitely started to develop some feelings. Any reason why he feels so lovely and like home? Any fun transits for us to experience soon? I met him last September during the lunar eclipse in Pisces. All right, so let's take a look here. It's kind of funny. I was laughing as I was looking at the synastry, because you're like, why does he feel like home? Well, his sun sits right on top of your Jupiter in Cancer. And Cancer is home. 4th house is home. It can feel kind of like soul family. And that is your chart ruler. So Kara, you know, when you have people who have planets conjunct those particular degrees in Cancer, like the, I would say like the 29th, the 30th, even the beginning of July, they're definitely going to feel faintly familiar. And like that Sun-Jupiter conjunction feels very warm. It also feels like there's some kind of emotional expansion, that there is joy and like happiness kind of tied to those particular people. So generally, if you see people who have like their sun, their moon, maybe their Venus, obviously their Jupiter north node, it's going to have that kind of vibe. It's going to light up your chart ruler. So that's part of it. But he also has a lot of planets similar to you in Capricorn. So in the same way that you've got like Cancer, Capricorn oppositions, he has some of the same stuff. I think the other reason why you really like him is because he's got his Venus and his Mars in your 5th house. And the 5th house is for lovers, right? So that can be about, you know, playmates, romantic connections, a little bit more like detached relationships that are more lustful. So I could see why you were kind of like, it was just going to be something that's fun, but there's feelings there. And I think feelings is going to be more kind of tied to aspects that are going on with your guys' moon. His moon in Taurus, it trines your Venus and your moon, and that might be why there is some like sense of security and like stability and an emotional connection to him. You do also see that his moon sextiles your Jupiter, so it kind of like enhances more of like the Sun-Jupiter synastry of feeling kind of like at home. And his Mars and Venus is in Leo, very passionate, and it's trining your sun. So there's a lot of stuff here where I really see like a lot of aspects that kind of trigger things, not necessarily square, but you're seeing a lot of like trines or oppositions. Even having his Mercury and his Jupiter in opposition to your Sun and Mercury sign, it's just he's very different than you. And together, because you're a Capricorn moon and he's a Sun in Cancer, you guys create like this full moon effect, which really illuminates and kind of shows you where there can be some really interesting kind of dynamics where there could be like a yin yang energy, right? Where it's like two pieces come together and it feels like it's like you're missing puzzle piece. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like having, like, I feel like 5th and 7th house synastry is really important because it is going to show you whether or not there is going to be some sense of romance there, or at least seeing those lords involved. So for you, you know, the 7th house is ruled by Mercury. So I'm looking at his Mercury. Well, it directly opposes your Mercury in the sun, which can be, for some people, kind of like we speak two different languages, but I feel like for other people, it's once again mirroring that kind of yin yang energy where it's like the polar opposites can actually attract. And Mercury in Sag is very much like the bigger picture, while Mercury, Jupiter in Gemini is very much like kind of chit chat, communication, short distance travel, but it can still like really trigger a lot of like communication with Jupiter in opposition to your Mercury. So it keeps things interesting, it keeps things lively. I do think that, you know, your Venus trine his moon, even though you don't have any exact like Venus-Mars aspects with each other, your Venus trine the moon kind of softens that, and it adds much more of like an emotional connection. And this guy's going through transit Pluto in opposition to his Venus right now. So there's definitely like a lot of changes going on in terms of how he relates to partnerships and other people. So when I flip this around, we look at his chart. He's a Scorpio rising, obviously with his sun in Cancer, and his moon is hanging out in Taurus. So part of what's kind of going on in his astrology, I mean, you can see your chart on the outside, you know, where you have the Jupiter Sun conjunction in the 4th, where you're like, it feels like home. He would say in terms of you, like, why is there such a strong connection? Like, why is there such a strong intimate pull or a sense of familiarity? Or like, why do I feel like I can tell her things that I can't tell other people? So that Jupiter on top of his sun is really kind of highlighting like the bigger picture of his life. It's his 9th house lord. Possibly traveling, learning from one another. That's another theme. And your sun and your Mercury sit in his 1st house. So even though he's a late degree Scorpio rising, with your sun Mercury in the 1st house, it's kind of like Velcro. It's a lot of wanting to be together, communicating, connecting. And I like that in terms of synastry. It means that you kind of like light him up, and your sun can kind of be like the spotlight that's showing him where he's growing and evolving and he's changing, right? The 1st house. And you might feel like things are just kind of in alignment with how he lives his life versus like, you know, you guys spending time together. Things just feel like it's easy. It's not complex. It's not complicated. I also think that all of your planets in Capricorn in his 2nd house have a very heavy weight to it. That would be whole sign 3rd, so it does kind of like, I guess, like highlight the way that you guys can communicate and connect and learn from each other. So communication being very important. But in the 2nd house Placidus, it's like he values you. There's a sense of weight that kind of comes into the relationship, or like not wanting to let you go, or seeing you as somebody that's like, no, like this is something I want to hold on to. It may feel like there's a bit of back and forth maybe because, you know, your Jupiter and his sun is in opposition to that. So even though he is a Cancer, he has a very strong Scorpio signature, right? Like Scorpio rising, sun in the 8th house, and also he's got a lot of planets in a fixed house, 2nd house. So it can take time for him to kind of evolve and open up and like physically or emotionally kind of commit to somebody. 2nd and 8th house also deal with values. So not just financial stuff, but like, you know, his values compared to other people. And I can see in his chart with Sun conjunct Chiron, he's been hurt a lot. Like there's some issues that kind of go back to either childhood with the relationship with his parents, or financial security issues that now have manifested as him being like, well, I have to work really, really hard to provide and make sure I have everything that I need physically, especially Capricorn. But what he's learning is that this is equally about the emotional and psychological kind of transformations and emotional security. So your gift to him with your Jupiter conjunct his sun is that you can highlight that and be like, hey, we can have closeness. Like there can definitely be a sense of having like really close like intimacy and connection. In terms of like transits that I would be watching for, I mean, I think for all Pisces risings, you know, having Jupiter going into Cancer this year, it's pretty strong for romance and connection and feeling like you have opportunities to kind of collaborate with another person and feel like you can have fun. And he's actually kind of wrapping up or concluding within the next 6 months a Uranus transit that's been in his 7th. So there's a lot of like changes and things kind of going on with relationship stability and security, and unconventional relationships, or things that are kind of unusual, or they're not super committed with Uranus being there. And it's also been on his moon. So for Scorpio risings, I think about Uranus leaving Taurus briefly for a couple months and relationships stabilizing. For Cancer suns, I think about Jupiter going into their sign and kind of like highlighting that there's opportunity for them to kind of focus on like joy and, you know, having more opportunities to travel or learn. So he's got that. And you need to see a really strong transit going on with his Venus for like relationship stuff to be kind of taking place. And that's happening. Venus and Pluto are in opposition to each other right now. So that means that there could be a need to really change and transform the way he's communicating with relationships at a distance, and like what it is that he wants or he needs in relationships. I think as you're getting into the beginning of 2026, when Uranus is no longer dancing on his moon and his descendant, and Pluto is no longer opposing his Venus, you know, relationship stuff is definitely going to level out a little bit. Like it's probably going to stabilize. And now there's like this shift that's going on, more revolving around emotions and connection and security, and also building what could potentially be a relationship that could turn into like a close home relationship, or living together is definitely a theme because Jupiter rules his fourth. So I would be watching for both of you guys the eclipses that are going to be taking place in September, particularly around the 7th, because it'll be in your 5th house. So it's obviously about romance, you know, a love affair, some kind of creative project, pregnancy. And then for him, he's going to be having that in his 5th house. So I'm going to go back for a second. The eclipse will be on your ascendant, but it is tied to Jupiter, which is the ruler in your 5th house. And then kind of flipped around for him, the eclipse in Pisces will be in his 5th house, trining Jupiter, which is actually going to be in his 8th. So it's almost like going to the next level of vulnerability in a relationship beyond just like the physical connection. It's the emotional connection, talking about the home, the family matters, and starting to think about some long-term relationship plans. The other thing that you could also look at in terms of the two charts together would be like the composite chart. And together, you guys are a Capricorn rising, Sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Pisces. So look at this, you guys have a composite full moon. Okay, and Saturn transits are very important. So it looks to me like, looking at some of these transits, like Saturn has been kind of going back and forth over your Mercury and over your moon. So there is like this sense between the two of you guys that's like, okay, you know, like communicating and talking about when you can get together, when you could see each other. Obviously, North Node Mercury is conjunct for the next month, so it's really highlighting like planning trips or going and doing like little getaways if you can swing it. And the eclipses are going to come through here in the fall, and you guys are also going to have an eclipse that's going to be on your Mars that will be taking place in the end of September. You mentioned meeting him around the eclipses in March, and I can't remember if you said it was this year or last year, but that eclipse that we had in March was right on your guys' composite sun in the 8th house. So it was about sexual connection, chemistry, but also vulnerability, opening up, and like learning how to change the way that you guys like look at your goals when it comes to togetherness. So obviously Saturn transits are gonna, you know, affect you guys very strongly. I think about Saturn and Neptune going into your guys' 3rd, so it's not just highlighting communication, but learning from each other, possibilities revolving around, you know, traveling or where you're living and how that impacts the relationship. And you'll see, especially, you know, in July and August, a retrograde in your 7th is giving you the opportunity to kind of reassess your relationship dynamic. The eclipses are definitely going to bring some stuff up because you guys were born on a full moon in Pisces in terms of your composite chart. So I would be really keeping an eye on the Pisces eclipse around the 7th. And next year, you'll see Jupiter fully go into your 7th house. So it looks like there's a lot more of like needing to talk about your feelings and kind of like strategically how you guys see more of each other, what that looks like, and building like more vulnerability with each other over like the next like 6 months. So hopefully that's helpful. You can always refer to like Capricorn horoscopes to give you an idea of what's happening between the two of you. Last year, September lunar eclipses. We might go to Vegas at the end of the month. Okay. So, I mean, I definitely feel like even if you don't do that at the end of this month, you know, having some of the transits that are going to be, you know, kind of hitting your 3rd house, definitely in September is very likely. And I'd be really focused on like the Saturn retrograde because it's going to impact your guys' composite chart quite a bit. And Saturn's actually retrograding in the 2nd of like money, resources, values. And it's not going to hit your moon or your Mercury, but it's going to be in the same sign. So it's going to be about, well, what do we value? What do we want in relationships? And like learning how to communicate and talk about and explore your guys' feelings and whether or not you're making more time to really see if there could be a much more serious commitment kind of coming down the road, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. All right, so we have Sharon. Is Sharon still here? I didn't see her. I know she was asking about Synastry. Sharon. Thank you, guys. I'll update you on the list in just a second. I'm going to take Deanna until I hear from Sharon. I know she asked, but I don't want to give her a reading she doesn't want. So let me pull up Deanna's chart. All right, what's up, Deanna? Let's see what she has to say here. Cashing in, please, anything about this Capricorn full moon, Uranus ingress. I'm in Ireland and I might be asleep by the time you get to me, but my eye's twitching. I know I'm gonna have serious man, but okay. All right, so the Capricorn full moon, let's take a look at that. That's coming up next week. All right, so that's going to be happening on the 10th, depending on what time zone you're in. Here in the States, it's going to be on the 10th in the PM, but this will be at 18 degrees. So according to like Leo rising, right, you know, Capricorn full moon happening in the 6th house. Oh, things revolving around your schedule, your routine, work, you know, making some decisions about what is and is not working for you work-wise, health-wise, and also connecting to your schedule. The ruler of this particular full moon is Saturn. So Saturn's going to be really significant because it will be just a few short days after the full moon that Saturn is actually going to start its retrograde for several months. And Saturn is just chilling in your 8th house right now, revolving around joint income, resources. But I could see how it ties into the whole sign 9th. Like, you know, that retrograde is, oh, I'm returning back home at some point. I'm going to be returning back home and there's going to be an adjustment to schedule or getting down to business when it comes to work or figuring out, you know, your to-do list. Certainly it could also mean that you're, you know, changing directions or changing plans revolving around how long you're staying there. So Saturn retrograde in the whole sign 9th could mean you're having to change flights or you're having to extend things or you're rethinking, you know, what your work schedule is going to kind of look like, and that might impact or kind of affect your travel plans. Also, something to think about is that you are going to have Mercury turning retrograde over Mars as well. So it's very similar in terms of the degrees. If you think back to like the Mars retrograde we had in December through like the spring of this year, you know, Mars went retrograde right around your natal Mars, and then it saw back and forth opposition to Pluto. So it was a lot of back and forth revolving around, well, being in another country and like working out scheduling and work and my planning, and also how that connects to the whole sign 1st and 7th, which is like relational stuff. So now you've got Mercury, which is going to be about your goals. It's also going to be about connecting with people in a foreign land. It's about groups, and it has a direct connection to money and resources. That's going to retrograde in opposition to Pluto slightly and conjunct your Mars. Mars rules traveling. So there's a lot of, I think, like traveling changes that are going to come, just kind of putting those two particular cycles together. Obviously, as a Capricorn sun, and the sun being your chart ruler, that full moon is pretty close to your 12-degree sun. So it's within about a 6-degree orb. I think that for you, like in the 5th house Placidus, this is going to be more revolving around creative opportunities, getting the show on the road with like finalizing creative projects or things that you're going to be producing and kind of putting out there that you've been working on. I would pay attention to my health, knowing that you're going to have a retrograde in your sign, in your rising sign, and also that you're having a full moon connected to your 6th house. Sometimes we feel a little under the weather, and so I kind of like, I see this pretty frequently with clients' charts where they'll have like a full moon or they'll have like an eclipse or something happen in the 6th and then a retrograde in the 1st, and they're like, man, just ever since I, you know, stopped going to the gym, I feel like crap. Or ever since I got back home from traveling, I'm having a hard time kind of adjusting to getting into a routine, or I'm recovering from the time change difference, or like whatever. So usually we see the effects of full moons. It doesn't have to be on that day. You can actually see some of the effects of the full moon still kind of lingering for about a week or two. So I'd be curious if you're going to be traveling at the end of July, or if there's anything kind of going on there. Maybe think back to some of the seeds that you planted during the new moon that we had in Capricorn, because this is now kind of all of that coming to fruition. So that happened for you back around December 30th. And it was really close to your Venus. So this was much more about new work goals, things revolving around your career, trying to kind of align things in a way where you felt like you can enjoy what you're doing more. Now, 6 months later, you're going to have that full moon and you're going to realize, well, okay, you know, this is kind of the effects of some of the work that I've been putting into this, but also it's very much connected to, is it going to make money, right? Saturn and Neptune in the 8th. And also, like, do you have to be better with kind of planning and scheduling things, especially revolving around education, training, writing deadlines, or anything that's going to be connecting to travel? I think Mercury retrograde just in your rising sign in general would be enough to kind of send you for a little bit of like a loop with traveling, but that factored in also with the Saturn retrograde, it does look like there could be some plans that could potentially change. So we won't see the retrograde actually happen until mid-July, and it'll go into the beginning of August, but we're already in the shadow. So I would be kind of thinking about, you know, what's been coming up for you in regards to, okay, what happens when I go home? What's next with the job search or the things I'm trying to launch, or if you're trying to put together programs or other things that you're doing with people in other places, how do you actually go about scheduling that and making that like real and tangible? And sometimes with Saturn retrograde, it could be like, well, I just don't feel like I have enough together yet to kind of figure out, you know, whether or not I'm going to be having a course or teaching something physically somewhere else. Or you're going to be planning into the future, getting everything in order, letting people know when you're going to be there. So be very careful with education planning and travel planning, okay? Good luck. Just catching up with some of the comments here. I'm not sure what the memberships account is. I don't believe I have one and have already sent funds. No worries. If you already sent, you don't need to worry about memberships unless you have a membership. If you have a membership, it means that you know that you get a reading once a month. If you don't have a membership, you can join. But we take the members first. So I go through all the members readings before I go to everybody else. Still waiting to see if Sharon pops up. So Sharon, let me know if you're here. Definitely let me know. We'll keep waiting to see if she comes through. I'm going to take Pearl and then Matt, and then we have Mike and Mary. And if you guys are still wanting to get into the queue to get a reading, you can. We're going to leave it open for a little bit. Kimberly, Juan, Ariel, Aaron, Astrid, Britney. If you hear your name, that means I've got you. Okay. All right, so let's move over to Pearl and see what Pearl has to say. Sag rising, sun in Virgo, and the moon is in Cancer. Pearl says, I've been laid off recently, and while I'm actively looking for a new job, I'm also thinking about starting a lifestyle blog as a hobby. Hopefully future side hustle during this period of time when I'm less busy. When would it be the best time for me to launch my blog? I'm looking at within the next 6 months at a maximum. Thank you. All right. Good question. I'm hearing, I've actually had a lot of Sag risings recently, like the last week. And I think it's like the Mars transits that's kind of kicking up. So if there's any Sag risings listening, give us feedback. Mars is going through, obviously, your whole sign 10th. And so Mars can be about cutting, or it can be about cutting back, or it could be as it's coming into conjunction with the South Node later in July, you know, or even the eclipse degrees that we're going to see later in July. It's about making some changes revolving around being out in the world, or some of you guys will experience, you know, oh, that's it, I'm done, I quit. Some people are going to be getting laid off. So that is a theme basically now through September for some people. A lot of it depends on your chart. But my thought is like, good for you that you're making lemonade. You know, for my Sag risings, I've been seeing a lot of you guys that have been really needing to lean on the Saturn-Neptune transit in Aries, which by sign trines you guys. In fact, for you, Pearl, it's trining your Pluto in the 12th. So it means that you're trying to kind of like put your thinking cap on and trying to come up with ways that you can personally change and transform creatively, because it's your whole sign 5th. do some kind of work from home to navigate some of these, you know, kind of career transits. Mars is the ruler. It's the dispositor of Saturn and Neptune. So it's really been kind of pushing on you guys recently, going, okay, you got to get more creative. What are you going to do? What are you going to create if you're experiencing some kind of lack or loss in like the 10th house department? So my thought is if you're going to put out a blog or if you're going to do anything that's creative, we need to be looking at both a combination of what's happening with Mercury, because that's going to be about visibility, and your career, and also anything kind of connected to Saturn, because Saturn or Uranus is tied to your 3rd house. So what's working in your favor, I think, is that your 3rd house ruler is in a trine to Pluto. So you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to do what you need to do. Equally, you have Saturn that's kind of trining your Venus, so you're really wanting to kind of like bring in some extra income, 8th house, through having like an audience. So I would look for, we want to get planets that are going to be in better like aspect. So I would be thinking about Mercury retrograde is going to happen. That's kind of like a working period. Mars is going to go into the 11th. Let's see. And you will have a new moon here, which is going to be in Virgo. So like this is a good time to actually set the stage for, you know, I mean, it'll be a solar eclipse actually. It's setting the stage for new opportunities. The thing that I don't like about this eclipse is that it's at a critical degree and it's in opposition to Saturn and Neptune, which is in your 4th. So believe it or not, this is going to be the time where you're probably getting into the full swing of like going back to work or your day job, in my opinion. And there's 2 new moons that are going to be in Virgo. So let's keep moving. Let's look at something like, I would say Saturn trine Jupiter. Your Jupiter, Saturn rules your 3rd. And then you're going to see some trines there, and that could be with getting an audience. So, I mean, I guess the question is, if you're watching, do you already have content that you're readily working on? Like, do you have the blog and everything ready? Do you have all of the like logos and all like the aesthetic stuff? Do you have like website stuff ready? Because that, you know, if you have things ready, you could do something pretty much around the full moon in Aquarius. I know I'm jumping around a little bit. You could. Otherwise, you would need to wait. So let's look at that full moon, because the full moon will be in your 3rd here, ruled by Uranus, and obviously now Uranus is moving into Gemini, but you've got Uranus trine Pluto. So if you have things ready, okay, I know it's Mercury retrograde, but you could still do it right around this time, August 9th, that's the full moon. You're going to see Mercury go direct a couple days later, so you could even do something like this when the moon is in a trine with Pluto, which is your whole sign 3rd, sextiling Saturn, ruler of your 3rd, and it's still within like the full moon kind of like phase. So that August 16th, 17th is definitely like a good time. But if you can't swing it, then you wait until you get planets into Libra. And I would do something when you're seeing some transits here. So I'm thinking Jupiter and Saturn trine, Jupiter direct, trining Saturn, and then you're going to have the sun here. Maybe let's do something with Mercury and Mars being in your 11th. So I'd say right around the new moon, around October 22nd. Because Venus is on the North Node. This is a new moon that's for your audience. You are going to see that it is starting to kind of come into some squares with Pluto, but it's pushing new ways to make money. And I think Venus on the North Node is actually really great. You can even do it. Yeah, I would say the new moon, because Mercury and Mars are like, okay, now, and it's in your 11th house of your audience, and it's trining Saturn, ruler of the 3rd. Those are the times that I would work with. So if you have it ready, do it in August, maybe a day or two after the
Mercury retro. If not, you can do something right around this new moon. And like all my Sag risings, 2 new moons, one's going to be a solar eclipse in Virgo, is giving you 2 chances to really rework everything revolving around how you're kind of handling like business and stuff. And a lot of this is also like, this is your Saturn return. I think you're getting it early. You know, Mercury rules your career, and you have Mercury retrograde, which means that you're having to rework or rethink about something about your relationship to your career and your job. And Saturn by sign, which deals with communication and learning, opposes Mercury. So you were going to come into your Saturn return, which wasn't really actually going to start for you until next year, the beginning of next year. And you would be like, this isn't working. I want to be home more. I don't want to be out as much. Like, I need to do something more different and creative. Like, how am I getting out of the office space? So good for you. Maybe the eclipses and the retrogrades in recent months kind of brought that up. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, Sharon, just let me know and I'll plug that information in. I will, let's see. Ashley, it looks like your payment is pending. So if it comes through, I will do the reading. If it doesn't, I can return it to you. And I have Sharon's chart. So let me pull up Sharon and then I can put in your partner's chart. So let's see, you're October 28th, so they are April 2nd, 75. (4:48 a.m. Lima, Ohio). All right, Sharon, just send that over whenever you want. She says, Synastry reading. Our anniversary is this weekend on July 6th. Hold on a second. I want to make sure I have the right person here. July 6th. Oh, duh. Why am I seeing multiple dates for you? October 28th, 1977. Oh, your anniversary is July 6th, 1996. I'm like, what am I looking at? All right, there we go. No worries. Let me look at your Synastry then. I mean, your composite. So July 6th, 1996. That was when you guys met. Would love to see what the chart shows. Okay, so together you guys are a sun in Capricorn, moon in Pisces, and you have a Pisces rising. So you can listen to the Pisces horoscopes to kind of see what's kind of going on for the two of you guys. Eclipses have been happening, kind of hitting this chart. So you've had a handful of like Aries, Libra eclipses in recent years. Now it's switching to Virgo and Pisces, which now you have the South Node kind of swinging through the 7th house. So it does represent some change in dynamic in your relationship. Not necessarily negative, just like there's changes going on. And both parties are going to be more in tune with what they need kind of personally, as the North Node is kind of going through the 1st house. So when we look at the date that you gave me when you guys met, July 6th, 96, or your anniversary, it looks like what was happening is the moon was moving through Aries in the 1st. You had Mars and Venus that were moving through Gemini. It was trining Pluto, Venus trine Pluto, and the North Node. And the North Node was conjunct your guys' composite Pluto. So it represented like a definitive time where you guys, I think, were supposed to meet, North Node going through the 7th, and Pluto represents a change, a relationship that was going to like wake you up, right? Jupiter was really close to your guys' Mercury, and obviously Jupiter rules the chart and Mercury rules marriage and relationship. So the fact that it was retrograding in conjunction was like, okay, meeting somebody that might play a pretty definitive role in our long-term kind of union and status, 10th house. That was your wedding day, okay. And then Neptune was also retrograding towards the sun, so it could have felt like a little magical. But I think that, you know, for me, if this is your wedding day chart, the Saturn moon stuff is particularly interesting because in this next year, you're going to see Saturn coming into conjunction with your relationship moon. You're also going to see your guys' composite Saturn, you know, return at a 7 for your wedding date chart. So I'm personally of the frame of mind that if people aren't married, I will look at like the midpoint composite or like even like their synastry. But if somebody's married, I like to look at the wedding chart. I think is like the first and foremost before I look at the composite, because that's going to tell me like after you guys made that commitment, what's going to happen, if that makes sense. So I'm saying that because you're getting ready to have Saturn hit the moon, Saturn and Juno in the South Node, and that'll be happening actually like all next year. But in terms of, you know, the composite chart in a nutshell, I mean, do I think that you guys are supposed to meet? The North Node Pluto stands out to me the most, I think. And maybe Jupiter retrograde over your guys' Mercury, because it does represent like a turning point revolving around a new union and like a new commitment. In terms of where your guys' transits are now, this is what's interesting is the North Node is conjunct the ascendant. So that could materialize in a composite sense of having a lot of togetherness, right? And kind of like really focusing on like that emotional connection more, maybe not being as kind of critical as the South Node is like finally leaving your 7th house. That's going to be nice. But you do have eclipses that are going to be there. You do have also, you know, Mars is going to be going into that house. So something that I would say is like where the transits are right now, I'm not too worried about. I'm thinking more down the road where you're going to have Mercury retrograde over your guys' Saturn. So that's going to be like, are we making time for date night and having fun and creative stuff together? Is there stuff that comes up revolving around children? If you guys have children and your relationship to kids, are you guys doing fun hobbies together? That might be something coming up during the retrograde, particularly at the end of July, because Mercury is very strongly tied to Mars and Virgo. And then we're going to see the South Node going through a conjunction with Mars, and then Mars will enter into the 7th. So in a very simple way, these transits in the 5th house of romance, these transits in the 7th house of relationship are very important. They're kind of intertwined. And I would be really focusing on ways, I think, from the second half of July into August to find more time to be able to like have fun together and like feel like you guys can do something that's kind of romantic or inspiring and that you're having a good time. The other thing that you want to watch with a chart like this is obviously it's a Jupiter ruled chart. So all year Jupiter is going to be hanging out in your guys' composite 4th house, which is more about expansion with the home and the family and making things feel more comfortable or focusing on that emotional connection and what's going on with relatives or what changes you guys are making at home. But you will see eclipses come through here that might kind of rock the chart a little bit as well. So that'll be happening in the fall. And you're going to have one eclipse that's going to be on your guys' composite moon, which can very much be about being, I think, especially in Pisces, like very psychically in tune, but it can also be like there's some stuff that's kind of subconsciously coming up that you guys are having to deal with. Good news is that the eclipse is ruled by Jupiter and it's trining Jupiter in your 4th. So this might be about changes with your own families separately and like how you guys are navigating that together, or you're, you know, making some changes to your bedroom. I would actually encourage that, like updating lighting or maybe bringing in, you know, like new decor or bedding or mirrors or art. It's very Pisces. And it trines Jupiter, which is exalted. It's the other one that you're going to want to watch. And it'll be this one that's going to be the solar eclipse happening in Virgo in your 7th house. And it's going to oppose Saturn in the 1st. So I feel like there can be sometime like mid to the end of September, definitely a little bit of like static that can kind of be coming up with this eclipse. So you'll want to go back and you want to look at what happened in March of this year when we had a Virgo eclipse. You know, did it bring you guys closer together, or did it kind of air out some issues where you're like, okay, something's not driving and we need to, you know, find a way to like fix it. Virgo is very much about fixing it and like being able to kind of make something better. I think that, you know, Capricorn Sun, you know, Mercury also that is trining Jupiter. You've got both the first house and the seventh house in your composite chart that's very much in harmony. So I think it's a really solid chart, but I'm looking at transit Pluto in opposition to your Venus in the fifth, and it's mirroring some of the things that I was telling you. Like, are you guys on the same page about your goals? You know, is somebody really kind of social and is the other person not? And are you guys finding it kind of disjointed sometimes when it comes to either managing kids or talking about, you know, your guys' hobbies, your interests? Like, are you making time for like romance and having fun? That's something I'd be really focused on over the next couple of months with the eclipses coming up, but in particular the retrograde that's going to be in your fifth house. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Sharon. Thanks for popping in. All right, so we have got Matt, and then Mike and Mary has a Synastry reading. We still have the queue open, so if anybody wants to get in there, I can take you. I know I've already called a number of people's names, so if you heard your name, I've got you. And we are now going to go to Matt. All right, let's see. Is he in here? Welcome. All right, so we've got Matt here. Aries rising, sun in Aquarius, and the moon is in Libra. You're having your lunar return right now. Oh, hey, Natalie, I did not see you. I will add you. All right, so let's see what Matt has to say. All right, back at it again with the health reading. My yearly checkup for my post-op eye got changed to 1 p.m. on the 18th of July. So let's look at that. July 18th, 1 p.m. And that's going to be in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Oh, no, in Memphis. Take that back. Memphis. There we go. All right, so we already did a reading on this appointment, but I want to check again with this new time. I've recently been seeing more symptoms in my right eye, and I think my left eye too, but I could just be paranoia. Every time I go in, they always tell me everything looks normal, so I'm just traumatized. Do you see me needing to have an emergency surgery or anything major, or is it just a regular good checkup? This gets into a different subject, but my buddy who had picked me up from surgery will be out of the country on this date, and I can't call my family because basically I have to hide all my health stuff from my mom because she's crazy and toxic over the years, long story. The recovery time will be 2 weeks, which would delay the start of my new job on the 23rd. I mess around with my insurance, etc. Okay, so let's take a look. So I'm noticing that you're saying you're wondering if it's going to be a checkup, but you're also saying people who pick you up from surgery. So I'm assuming you're questioning whether or not there's going to be something going on that would require surgery, right? That's what I'm assuming. So this is the transits of the day and the time that you're going to be going and getting your doctor's appointment. July 18th, 1 p.m. in Memphis. Libra rising chart, obviously ruled by Venus. Venus is going to be hanging out in the 8th house. It will be making a sextile to Mercury, which is the 12th house lord, so helping resolve any fears or anxiety that you have, or self-undoing tendencies, 12th house, revolving around your health. So that's a really important aspect. And I almost kind of feel like if that's the ascendant, you know, and that's the aspect Venus is making, and it's at a Gemini degree, so it's going to be about looking at both eyes, right? And on top of that, you know, the retrograde is kind of saying, like, let's just go and just double check and like review and make sure everything's okay. Like, it's a pretty decent aspect. Venus is also in a square with the north and the south node in the 8th house. So there's this fear that's like, oh my God, is something going to change with insurance? Am I going to need surgery? Like, what's going on? And I don't necessarily think that that's what means is going to happen. Venus is also ruled by the moon, which is in the 7th house of partnerships, and it's in its domicile. Actually, it's exalted, excuse me. So that aspect also is a decent aspect. Sextiling Jupiter makes me feel like you're going to get good health news. I do feel like Chiron and the moon being on the descendant is about like a doctor being a little bit more aware and attentive of what it is that you do need. We also have the sun starting to come into a trine with Saturn and Neptune. It's an out of sign trine, but it's there. Probably the only thing I'm not crazy about is the South Node Mars. But honestly, I look at this and I go, well, it could be a time where you're like, I'm finally letting go of this fear. Like I have this like, phobia. It is in the 11th house. I think that's more the loss of like, oh, I wouldn't have a friend that would be there to help me if something happened. It's scheduled as a checkup, but I'm seeing it. Okay. Yeah. No, it's okay. I mean, do I see this being like a situation where you're going to need surgery? No. I think this is a situation where, yes, during that time, somebody's not going to be around, but I don't think there would be anything surgical around that time period anyway. And I would never, ever recommend an Aries rising chart get some kind of surgical procedure when Mars is conjunct the South Node. So even if they were to come back to you and say, hey, we think something's wrong, we need to schedule a surgery, I would tell you wait until Mars gets into Scorpio, which I don't think they're going to do personally. Comparing this to your natal chart, kind of mirroring some of the themes. Obviously, it's opposite because that was Libra ascendant, but that's bringing somebody to your aid and assisting you. Look at where Mars is right now. Mars is coming into conjunction with the South Node. So this is about you going like, okay, I'm going to let go of something, feeling like there's something wrong or being like overly critical, South Node and Virgo, when it comes to your health. Mars is also going to be reactivating as it goes the end of July into the beginning of August, some of the same areas where we had eclipses in Virgo. So something that I know astrologers talk about it, but I haven't really heard a lot of like YouTube astrologers talking about it. You guys have to understand, because there have been eclipses in this sign and because there have been eclipses in Pisces, when we have the moon go through Virgo, there's this dealing with the past, clearing things out, being critical, dealing with health stuff. And when we have the moon transit through Pisces, it's more about what's going on with our emotions and this, that, and the other. So because you're in Aries rising, I would say what a great time to be like, oh, there's nothing wrong. I don't need to fix anything. Nothing's wrong, and really kind of paying more attention to what's kind of coming up for you emotionally. Obviously, I get it. If something's going on with your eyes, you want to have it checked out. I also think part of this is, Pluto is sitting right on top of your sun. So it can create some issues revolving around, worry or concern or tension, pressure, right? Pluto revolving around, oh my God, am I going to need a surgery? 8th house Lord, is there something wrong with my eye? If you were having a hard square, I would say maybe, but you won't. Thankfully, when you're having the appointment, the moon is coming out of the square with Pluto. So it's like, it's not going to be in an exact square. I'm not really concerned about you being told that you need surgery. I feel like I would hear them out and hear what they have to say. And if you need to go and do something surgical, you're going to want to do this when Uranus is no longer squaring Mars. You're going to want to do this when Mars gets into Scorpio. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I think if anything, this is about you going, I have to prioritize what's going on with my health. I'm seeing the doctor, checking it out, making sure everything's like kosher. And they may say to you, okay, we'll look at it or we'll run some tests or we'll see, what kind of comes back. And a lot of my Aries rising charts are going through this. The end of July, beginning of August, they're either going in and doing follow-ups or they're going to have appointments where doctors are going to say, come back. If this does not improve within X amount of time, or we're going to give you this treatment, or we're going to give you this medication, come back. Mars is something that's sharp too. So I'm kind of wondering, like, if you're saying you're having issue with your eyes, are you having pain or are you having vision issues? Because sharp pain, anything that's going to be like nerve related, or if there's like burning, or if you're light sensitive, I'd be more concerned about that. But if you think that it's just something that's more vision oriented, I'm not as concerned about that personally, looking at the chart. You're going to get a lot more clarity also when, the sun and Mercury go into your 6th house health-wise. So you'll have this new moon that's going to be very close to your Mars. August 23rd, and now Mercury is direct, so feeling better with some of the stuff that's going to be kind of going on, I think, when it comes to, you know, the retrograde in terms of your health. And then a month later, you'll have a 29-degree eclipse as well. And that makes me feel like that's going to be more working with new people, starting a new job, meeting new people, you know, anything revolving around even new potential schedules, new relationship energy that's going to come in. Because remember, that 29 degrees is like the critical turning point of, I got to deal with all the health stuff, I got to deal with all the scheduling stuff, whatever, so I can be more available and like ready for relationships, Mercury in the 5th. So you might meet somebody through work actually in September. So I don't get the vibe that there's going to be anything wrong health-wise. I think that maybe if you were having a Mars square to Pluto, maybe if you were having an opposition to your sun, maybe, but you're not going to be having those things. Mercury in opposition just means that you're dealing with, okay, your fear of something going wrong and somebody being like, no, I've like looked at everything, you know, or we've ran tests, we've scanned things, like nothing's wrong. You could, if you wanted to, when like Mercury gets into Virgo or when Venus gets into Virgo, so you're looking at kind of September, you know, ish. If you want to get a second opinion, you can, and you could definitely do that around the eclipse that's going to happen in your 6th house, if that's something you feel like you need to do. This would be a time that, you know, if you're still having problems and you feel like the doctor you're working with isn't making any headway, you can consider seeing another option. Mercury is about, you know, having your choice of potentially two people. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Definitely hold off on assuming you need surgery. But the good news is like if you do need surgery, you're going to have Mars going through a really good part of your chart later this fall. So when it gets into Scorpio in October, it's going to start going into your 8th house and trining your natal Saturn and then trining transit Saturn. So yeah, so that's definitely very possible and like very doable, but hold off at least until like October going into November before you make any of those moves. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. All right. We got Natalie and Victoria that popped in. What's up, guys? I'll put you on the list. Let's pull up Natalie's chart here. Just let me know what your question is. There we go. Natalie says, will I find a house before the 25th of July? My current house has been deemed unlivable and my ex isn't going on my lease anymore. 1988, Queensland, Australia. So before the 25th of July. So your home is going to be connected to Uranus in Gemini. Oh my God, sorry, I'm kind of like mixing up my words here, but I'm looking at Uranus going into your whole sign 4th, and that's going to create some changes, especially with a relationship. 19. Okay, sorry, I'm just kind of geeking out. Mercury is connected to your 4th house. So notice Mercury is also connected to relationships. It's retrograding in your 5th. And it means that there is a change going on with like a relationship dynamic and them no longer being tied to your home life. And also there being some turbulence with relationships. So it's like there's a lot of stuff going on here. Before the 25th, my ex used to pay my rent. Okay, I think that's the south node of my 7th. I think I need to let him go. He has a new girlfriend. He knew I was seeing Dean again. I mean, honestly, with eclipses that you had recently in your 7th house and the south node there, I would say that would be enough to like be like, oh, something's not working. And the sun represents your 6th house of like where things are like difficult or challenging and things that people might not have been telling you. So that's enough of a reason to let him go. And then you're going to have Mars go through there at the end of the month, which could also be like really kind of covering, like cutting and like severing from another person right around the end of July, beginning of August. And that Mercury retrograde is about really trying to kind of break things off as it goes over your Venus. Holy cow. And then we need to see something strong going on with Mercury for your home. So in terms of your chart, your natal Mercury is in Libra in the 8th. So that's why you've had assistance with other people paying for your rent. And it looks like Chiron's opposing that. So it's bringing up the need to be, you know, okay, I have to figure something out. I have to pay it for myself. The thing is like, just as a Pisces rising, I think with like Uranus going into Gemini, it means that, you know, sometime later in July, you're going to see some kind of like, oh, I'm freeing myself of this situation. So whether it's moving out of a house or breaking away from a relationship where there's some kind of financial support, that is part of it. And Uranus is now going to be tied to Mercury, and Mercury is kind of dictating the changes happening with Mars, relationships, and also dictating the changes that are happening at home, whole sign fourth. So it's like, this looks really messy, girl. Like, this looks really, really messy. Like, this is also foreshadowing what's coming in the future, okay? Because eventually, when you get into next year, Saturn is going to come up on your Mars, and it's going to hold you accountable for being more financially responsible. And that's not me nixing you. It's just your Mars is retrograde, and it's at an 8. So it deals with becoming reliant on other people, staying in relationships that are toxic for security or financial reasons, not properly managing debt, you know, making purchases or spending money and then being like, I should have done that. Like, it's trying to teach you a lesson here. So next year when Saturn hits that, you don't want to be in a situation where you are tied to somebody where there is like a lot of toxic stuff going on revolving around the give and take in the relationship. And I would say a South Node transit in the 7th house is like enough of like a reason to be like, if something's not working, let them go. But when you have Mars involved, which is really saying, no, it's time to stand up and be like, this is not working for me anymore. And then on top of that, you're going to also be seeing Uranus go into your 4th. I mean, things can get a little colorful here. So do I see it happening before the 24th? Well, in some ways, the astrology is freeing you. And in other ways, it's not necessarily like working in your favor. Probably the best transit you're going to see is when Venus hits your Jupiter. And that's going to be happening like around July 9th and 10th. You got to be hitting the pavement, looking for places those days. Because Venus is going to bring you safety and security and comfort. And also it's in Gemini, so it's another option. And it's going to hit Jupiter in your whole sign 4th, which means you're like, okay, it's different. It's not really necessarily what I wanted, but, you know, we can swing it. And what you'll see is the moon is also going to come into a trine here as well. So it's going to help you with finding some safety and security for like a home. And Gemini is most likely going to be like a multi-unit. So it could mean that it's somewhere that's kind of closer to like a city area. It could be a place where there's like a lot of bike paths. It could also be that you end up hearing from 2. Venus, Uranus is like, I applied to all of these and I heard back from both of them. But it'll be a multi-unit or like an apartment or like a condo. And then you're going to see Venus come into your 4th house. And this is really strong around the 20th and the 21st. Venus and the moon are going to align right here in your 4th house, and it's going to square the north and the south node. Well, Venus rules other people and other people's money and resources. So it can mean that, okay, you're applying for apartments, they're running your credit, they're checking everything, you know, seeing if it's going to work for you, and then being like, okay, great, you know, it turns out it works, we're going to let you have it. But I've been looking at the 21st of July for a little bit because I'm like, man, with that moon square and also the square to the south node in Mars, it's going to be like, yeah, you're really breaking away from somebody, but what do you have to gain? A new home, you know, more emotional or psychological security, new relationships. So my money would probably be on the 21st is kind of what I'm thinking. And, you know, you're going to see the moon trine your natal Mercury at the same time. And then the moon will come into conjunction with Jupiter, which could literally mean if everything goes according to plan, the 20th through the 22nd. This is the astrology. It's not really so much your timeline. Then the moon will come into conjunction with Jupiter, which means you may actually have some stability and security that can kind of be coming through. The other way that I look at it is also, you know, Jupiter being in your whole sign 5th house and making some of the aspects that it's making with the Mercury retrograde. Could also be that you've got like another guy that you're seeing or you're dating or another partner that's like, look, you know, if you really need something or if you need to stay with me until you find something or until you kind of get from point A to point B or you figure out what you're doing, that 19 is going to represent somebody having a conversation or trying to kind of help you, being like, what can I do to help you? What do you need? Or how can I help you with the moving process? Or, you know, how can I make this easier on you? So take note of that. Fourth house could also be like family related matters and things kind of connecting to talking to family about what's happening, and family could get involved. But I think it's pretty safe to say by the time Venus comes into conjunction with Jupiter, it does look like that is going to be a little bit more solid in terms of the home and the living situation, because you have exalted Jupiter there. It's trining the North Node. Worst case scenario, if it ends up being a situation where you're staying with like a boyfriend or a romantic friend, because that is your whole sign fifth, that could be the case just to get you through to the beginning of August. But then I do think that you are actually going to be kind of doing your own thing. So those are the time dates that look like the most prominent for me. I do have a court hearing for compensation. Well, the Mars transits work in your favor then. You know, Saturn and Neptune is like in your second house. I'm not paying for it. I'm owed something. And then Mars goes into your whole sign eighth, and it's like, okay, you need to pay me what I'm owed. So that also kind of comes up a bit for you right around the beginning of August. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Good luck. Uranus in the fourth house is not for the faint of heart. It's like suddenly everything is changing, or you get really kind of restless and you kind of like want out of the house, you know? All right, so let's pull up Victoria. What's up, Victoria? What's going on? She says, new job, start on July 21st. Mars South Node conjunct my first house advice. Review first day on the job chart. Is it a good fit? Oh, my nerves. You know, personally, I mean, and this is the case for, it's like we're, you know, Gemini risings are like, what the heck, or Pisces risings are like, what the heck's going on at home? Now we have the other mutable risings that are going to have it in other angular houses. So to some extent, you've already had Uranus in your seventh house for a little bit, Victoria. So that does represent some kind of like new change that's going to be happening at work. And obviously new work, new schedule, new people, new office, like all of that stuff. That's very much Uranus. And it's been in Taurus, which means some of the changes that you've been waiting for in terms of your career, they've been slow, right? There has been some sense of kind of feeling like you make a little progress, but then things kind of like go sideways, and you're traveling or you're publishing or you're doing other things that have not necessarily made time for you to really kind of slide into like this new position. So Uranus going into your 10th house is very much about kind of keeping an open mind and having a change in your office dynamic, relationships with people, the way that you're looking at your career, and a lot of like fast communication. Having your first day on the 21st, you're going to have the Moon-Venus conjunction in the 10th, squaring the nodes. Oh, man. I could see this is like going to be a day, like the 20th, the 21st, like with some of these squares for my mutable signs, that's like adapting to the change. But guess what? Moon, Venus, and Gemini is like, we like the change. The change can be good, you know? It doesn't have to be like negative. And maybe it means that you get into it and you're like, I can do this and what I've been doing. I can do both. And I feel like Venus and the Moon is like, you know, friendly women that you're going to be working and connecting and collaborating with. This also sextiles your Aries, so it's really highlighting like communication and connection with new people. This is also sextiling Mercury, which is your chart ruler. Retrograde in the 12th, where you're kind of taking a step back and you're feeling it out, and you're like, what is this like about? Like, what's going on here? Like, people going through the motions, like wanting to learn everything. It's really about going into it and like just observing. That's my advice. I feel like with Mercury retrograde in the 12th, watching, shadowing, observing, not immediately jumping into anything, like really letting people kind of like show you or teach you the ropes. And maybe it's going to be about listening more. And then obviously, you know, you're going to see squares between Venus and Mars in your first house. But part of the Mars South Node transit, I would say, is really going to be about you releasing the need to feel like you need to jump in and do everything at one time, right? When Mars is in the first house, it's like, you get up early, you have a lot of energy, you want to work out, you want to get things done, you want to be the first, and you want to be the person who's like really kind of taking care of business. But Mars is not, you know, totally thrilled when it's in Virgo, especially with the South Node, because it could mean that we're too critical, too fast. Maybe we are too hard on ourselves. Maybe we're too much of a perfectionist. And that square to Venus and the moon is really saying you don't need to jump into anything, especially with Mercury's connection. You're supposed to be observing, paying attention, listening to people, you know, meeting superiors or bosses, like letting some women kind of come in and show you the ropes. But certainly some very prominent, definitive turning points are going to be happening, I think, with the day that you're starting your first day, because these squares are saying you're moving more into something that could be more, you know, like pleasurable. She says, I'm going through the motions. I do need to watch these hosts, and I'm nervous. I release my need to prove myself, and I'm already good. I'm already worthy. Yeah, and, you know, Mars is stuff that's connected to heat and stuff that's like sharp. And I think because Mars rules Virgo's whole sign 3rd house, it's going to be about your words, right? So it's like not being like, oh, I know that, or I know this, or I need to do this. No, just like listen. And be mindful of like how you're kind of communicating. And it's more about like not being impulsive or feeling like you need to kind of like stand up for yourself. Give it a chance. You know, believe it or not, Venus being the ruler of your Placidus 10th and being in the 10th of the moon is actually pretty fortuitous, I think. I think it's a nice aspect. And then probably what you will find is right around the time that planets are kind of getting into Libra and starting to kind of trine with Uranus, and you're getting settled into some of the changes that you have made, you're going to feel good about it. But Uranus is going to go back and forth over your midheaven, you know, for some time. So it's only a couple of months that it's going to be in Gemini. And then you're going to see it retrograde back into Taurus, which means like if you decide you don't like it, or you know, you're not jiving with people that you're working with, or you want to make a change, you could. I mean, you'll get to November and it's going to hang out on your midheaven again. And then it's going to go back into your 10th house in March. And then it's going to go back into Gemini in April. So, you know, Taurus is about kind of like where we get comfortable. Like Gemini is like, boom, something new. So I'm curious if you have this for a couple of months, decide you like it or you don't like it. And then if you decide that you want to go back to what you were doing, focusing on, you know, teaching, training, publishing, and then you're open to another opportunity, that's going to be next spring. But, you know, it's gonna trine Pluto, so that's nice. I mean, it means that there's definitely a change in office and kind of environment and where you're working and how you're working. And I think as an Aries, like connecting with new groups of people, like you might make some friends at work. You know, that's kind of the feeling I get. So hopefully it goes well for you. Just be mindful of your health. Don't be speeding. Take note of anything that's like connected to digestional issues with Mars and Virgo. And also like heat, rashes, fevers, like just really kind of keep an eye on your health with that conjunction. Hopefully that's helpful for you. We're calling last call. So you guys want to get in, you can get in now or never. And I gotta add a number of people in here in just a second, but I'm gonna keep going because we've got a couple more people, and then I'll add some. I've got Mike and Mary, and you guys are gonna be a Synastry reading. So let me pull that up. Let's see, Mike and Mary. All right, so let's see what they have to say here. So Synastry for Mike, his date of birth is 10/11/89, and that was in Georgia at 2:34 a.m. And then we've got Mary, 8/25/84 at 9:47 p.m. in the Bronx. She says, on the verge of a breakup after catching him in yet another lie. Sneaky behavior involving his ex, which is a reoccurring issue I've had to address multiple times in the last 2.5 years. The truth revealed itself last Friday, confirming what I've always suspected, and now I'm torn if I should give him another chance. Is this just a bump in the road, or is it time to walk away for good, especially with the trust completely gone? Yikes. All right, well, looking at your chart, Aries rising, Venus rules your relationships, and right now the South Node is conjunct your Venus, girl. And this is a perfect example of why the 6th house is an absolute shit show for relationships. Venus in the 6th is not easy to begin with, but this is the 12th house to the 7th, okay? So like if you were to look at this from an Aries rising, you hear, oh, Pisces, you know, self-undoing, things that you're, you know, hiding, like, you know, sabotage, psychological issues, like all that stuff. But for your partners, that is the 6th. And that's why sometimes having Venus in the 6th house can cause issues, or it can cause breakups and problems in relationships, because something is sometimes concealed. So why is it being revealed to you now? Well, the South Node is there, so it's basically a once in a 18.5-year period where if you want to break away from a relationship because you feel like something is not savory or it's not, you know, healthy, Venus in Virgo in the 6th, is this healthy? Or is this a long-standing issue, right? Is that 22 degrees? Like, that's kind of coming up. Also, guys, I'm going to tell you, we're going to see so much relationship drama. I don't like to say that, but a Mercury retrograde in Leo brings up a lot of drama in regards to what people are saying, what they really want, what they think, and changing their mind. And Mercury is directly connected to the South Node Mars transits. So, you know, it's basically saying this doesn't feel good, this doesn't feel healthy, blah, 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 blah. And you have a critical degree on your 7th house cusp. 29 degrees means that it's like a lot of lessons being learned in this lifetime about relationships. In particular, I think with Pluto being there, it could be about like lots of transformation and sometimes feeling, yeah, like some kind of like toxic stuff that can come up in relationships. And then there's Saturn, so like that's some heavy astrology in your 7th house. With Mercury retrograde, that's going to happen pretty soon. That's going to go retrograde like right through your whole sign 5th house. It's going to be whether or not you really feel like you're in love, or if you feel loved, or if you feel like this is something that's making you happy. I would start there, especially considering that the retrograde is squaring Saturn. So you're like, does this make me feel good? Does this make me feel like wanted and loved? If anything, without even looking at his transits, this is the time to get out of something if it's not working. And Uranus sitting on your North Node here for the next year means that you may be a little bit more forthcoming and spontaneous in the way that you're communicating and expressing yourself, compared to, you know, maybe how you've been in the past, right? So I would watch these dates because I feel like they're going to be very prominent for a change in direction with your relationship. One is going to be when Mars comes in conjunction with the South Node right around July 20th, so maybe give or take a couple of days on each side. And it looks like this is brought on by a conversation about what is and is not working. Then you're going to have Mars conjunct Venus with the South Node, and that could also be a breaking or a tearing away of something, and that could be around the 20th of July. All while Mercury is retrograde. Like, it doesn't, like, I almost feel like even if you overlook it, and it sounds like if you've been talking to somebody about this for 2.5 years and it's still happening, like, you know, you're going to have to ask yourself, can you actually get over it? And like, is that going to cause some huge issues for you revolving around whether or not you feel good enough, or if this is truly love, right? That's the question to ask yourself. And then the finale, there's 2 actually. Mars opposing Saturn. So that'll also create some issues where there could be some partner that's really pushing, you know, trying to reconnect, being like, why are you doing this? What's going on? And you're like, I'm done in August. And then you're going to have, during the eclipse that will be in Virgo, Mars is at 29 degrees. So the eclipse is very close to your Venus in the South Node, so it's bringing up some of that stuff if it's still going on. And Mars is conjunct your Pluto. Like, this is my way of saying to you, there could be a little bit of drama, but it may smooth over, but it's going to come back. And it's going to come back with a vengeance. And my thought is like, you know, maybe learning a little bit about your Venus placement, and that sometimes you can be in situations with people who kind of hide things. He's a Virgo rising. And Saturn and Neptune have been going through his 7th and are very close to his moon. So it's bringing up like a little bit of tension in regards to relationships with other people. His relationships are ruled by Jupiter. He's got Jupiter in the 10th house of career in opposition to Venus and Saturn. And to me, it kind of looks like between the 2 of you guys, this is a very difficult relationship dynamic. Like, all of your Leo stuff sits very close to his South Node, which is in his whole sign 12, which is past life, stuff that's hidden, behind the scenes. And it's almost like you guys are together, but there is this feeling of, I'm never truly going to know who I'm with, or I'm never truly going to reveal a part of myself or this part of myself to, you know, this other person. Like this is really hard synastry to have. I'm not saying stay or go. I'm just saying it's difficult. And with your moon and Juno sitting on the south node, it makes me feel like likely in the past, you guys have some kind of karma revolving around having been you know, married. Juno can be about partnership and marriage, and that there was like this commitment, but in this lifetime, it's like, well, it's not really manifesting like that. And there's other people, and he's trying to stay committed to you, but there's like interest that he has with other people. Neptune is connected to relationships, and it's in his 4th house with Venus and Uranus, which means like there is a tendency for him to kind of like go back and think about the past, harbor feelings about the past, and like not make amends. And so I would be curious, and I would ask him like, what's the deal? Like, you're in a relationship, we've been in a relationship for 7 years, why are you going back to the past? And if that's something that you're doing, then like, how can you be present in this relationship? He also has Juno conjunct your Pluto. That's not good for like long-term relationship and commitment. That to me tells me that intensity revolving around your guys' dynamic of whether or not he feels like he's being possessed in a relationship or being kind of held on to can actually destroy any potential of there being able to be some long-term commitment type, you know, theme. You like him because there is a Jupiter-Venus conjunction, and that maybe feels good at first, but some of the heavy hitters in synastry is going to be like, you know, Pluto, Saturn contacts, you guys have that. Neptune, Venus contacts, you guys have that. I mean, sun, moon, south node stuff. This is a very difficult relationship for you to stay in. And I think that I would be really looking at the overall themes of what's going on. He's had retrogrades and eclipses. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, as much as I hate to say this guy's been fucking around since this spring. Like at minimum, okay? Because Mercury and Venus, so Mercury rules his chart, went retrograde in his 7th, which means he was returning and reconnecting with other people in a secret fashion. Pisces. Videos, pictures, FaceTime, you know, looking up their stuff or looking at their stuff. And the retrogrades and the eclipses are really what brought this out into the open for a partner to see what he was doing that was kind of like mischievous, right? So my concern is like, if this is a pattern, if it's been a pattern, and if it's something that you've talked to him about and he continues to keep doing it, and now the universe is like, here you go, we're going to give you proof that he's doing it. Do you want to stay? Virgo risings are a little mischievous, especially if Mercury is his chart ruler and it's conjunct Pluto and the sun. That means that he is always either going to be talking to, texting, thinking about, or going through social media that's going to be connected to like playmates. Like literally, like he will be thinking about other people. He will be trying to look at other people. He will be having secret conversations. Like, hell no, no, don't do that. And some other people may not care, but I would look at that and I would be like, your Saturn is going to care, because your Saturn in Scorpio is going to like call somebody on their shit, especially if they're not being like honorable, right? And it can create grudges. Saturn in Scorpio holds grudges. So it'll be something that you'll always think about. You'll always bring it up. You'll always hold it against him. She says, you're so right. She FaceTimed him when it happened. Okay. Yeah. It's very real. This stuff will continue to happen. And like, my thought is like, do you want to be that? You know, the Aries moon in the 7th house also, it can get kind of bored with relationships, because Aries is a fire sign. So, you know, he'll kind of either scroll through potential relationships and he's looking for an exciting kind of like connection, and then he'll like go away. And that squares his Venus. That also squares his Jupiter. Like there's not a lot of like consistency there. You know, I know it's rough, but I feel like be very careful. If you got Pluto in your 12th house, in your 7th house, you're going to bring in a lot of Scorpio people, and younger people too, because it's at a Leo degree. And Saturn's there. Like this guy is like literally your Saturn lesson. Of course you like him. Look at all of his 7th house stuff in your chart, right? But I don't think it's good for you in the long run. I think that this is like a karmic contract that you need to like, you know, kind of like nullify. And maybe you could do that during the retrograde. You can write it out. Like, whatever karmic agreements we had in past lives are null and void. Like we may have been, you know, married in a past life, but, You know, like I'm not getting that commitment or that consistency in this lifetime. So, you know, that's kind of like released. I'm releasing that. And you could do that through something that you're writing, or you could burn a piece of paper with the writing on it, or like whatever. But I'd be really careful with this one, because I feel like if it's something that's become a pattern and a habit, it's going to keep coming up. And probably what's going to happen, just looking at some of your transits, it can't be about you going like, well, I caught you doing this again, so I'm done. It needs to be, I'm not doing this anymore with you, because the way that you act and the fact that you're not choosing me doesn't make me feel loved. And like, I love me enough to be like, I'm not participating in this, you know? Yeah, sorry to be like so like direct, but just trust me, it will continue. And you'll deal with this for quite some time. Cancer rising, moon in Gemini, North Node in Aries. So your 7th house is ruled by Saturn. And in your guys' chart, you have Sun, Jupiter, and Libra, which represents relationships in the past, and it squares Neptune. So you're always going to get a distorted sense of like what has happened in past relationships, and like, you know, what went on. Like, and Saturn's coming into an opposition with your guys' composite sun. The moon is in Gemini, Jupiter is there, and then Uranus is going into the same sign. It's possible that if you do take some space from him, or if you're like, I'm not doing this anymore, I mean, that comes up pretty strongly the end of July, beginning of August, but he may come back around and be trying to kind of communicate or talk to you about trying to work things out. Like if you put him on ice, most likely you'll hear something right around here, early November. And it'll be like, well, can we talk about it? Can we work on it? You know, because Mercury's retrograding over your Saturn, your relationship house. And him having enough time to be alone to think about it, to then pause and reflect. But South Node Jupiter would be enough for me to be like, nope. Sorry, I hope that that's helpful. I know that's some difficult stuff. All right, well, with that being said, I got to add all of my people back in. Readings are also now closed. So if I missed you guys, I'll catch you next week. And I'm going to plug some of these in. So it looks like for Jeffrey, for Ashley, your PayPal is still pending. I don't know why it does that, but I'm just letting you know. So hopefully it goes through. Britney, I need you to send me your birth information, please. It just says reading for Britney, but none of your information. So if you could send that. What's up? Miss Taliba? Well, actually, you're a level 3 member, so let me take you. I'll just throw you in here really quick. And then we will put everybody else in. What's up, Miss Fogle? Let's see. What does she have to say here? Hey girl, hey, 9/11/74. She says, so I hate my job, but I've been making the best of it for a while. August makes it year 10. I do not know what I want to do or where to start looking, but I have to leave this position. Any insight my chart can provide as to where to look and what to do? Well, interesting that it's 10 years and you're coming up on your Jupiter 10th house transit. So this happens every 12 years. So think back to what happened like 12 years ago. Were you kind of nearing the end of something? You were realizing you were burnt out. You're already looking. Jupiter coming into your 10th house is like a once in a 12-year period that gives you expansion in regards to your career and your professional life. So between that happening and Jupiter hitting your 10th house ruler, the moon, pretty great aspects actually. A lot of Virgo are also burnt out because they're seeing, you know, some of the transits that are kind of taking place with Uranus. That's like, hey, I need to shake something up. So Uranus going into the 9th house looks like it's about learning, training, certification, traveling, education, publishing, something like that might pop up. That would give you the opportunity to start thinking about how you can be expanding on some of your skills or like looking elsewhere or looking somewhere further away. But my thought is Jupiter coming into conjunction with your moon and your midheaven is like the best of the best. So you're going to be seeing sometime around August 8th through, let's say, the beginning of September. Venus will go through here, Jupiter will go through here, giving you the opportunity to really grow and expand. And Jupiter represents travel, moving, relocation. It could also be stuff you're doing online or sending in applications or looking for new positions and talking to people or traveling for interviews or job-related things. What's tricky is that Jupiter will then hit your Saturn, which is your fourth house ruler. So it means that you may be considering, okay, I want to go into a new position. I want to get out of a past position, or you're looking at jobs that could literally be in other areas that could help you move or like relocate. Okay. Now Jupiter will be hanging around your 10th house all year long. So that's a year of opportunity for growth when it comes to your professional life. You may see some stuff that pops up in Scorpio season because you're going to have some planets go into your money house trining Jupiter, which could also further enhance confidence of feeling good when it comes to making a career change. And then as a Libra rising, you have an eclipse that will be in September in your whole sign 6th, which could also indicate that there's like a job change. So there's something like that that's kind of like going on, that those time periods are going to be the most prominent. For a lot of Libra risings, it's like, oh, I've made the necessary scheduling change or the sacrifices or whatever. And like, I quit my job because I found something that's more fulfilling, like Jupiter in the 10th. And Cancer could be property management, real estate, interior design, nurturing, caretaking roles. And I mean, moon conjunct Saturn, like that's a placement I see of somebody who's like, yeah, I'm a real estate agent, or, I flip homes, or I stage homes, or I work as a nurse or a caretaker, or, I work with women. I'm not saying you have to do those things, but certainly there's going to be more of an interest in doing some kind of work like that, in my opinion. And then Jupiter will retrograde back over your Saturn here, which will be January, February of next year, go direct on your moon, giving you another opportunity to make a change in March when Mercury retrogrades in your 6th. So those are all of like your windows. I think that for where to look, I mean, Jupiter is like community connections, community outreach, sprucing up your resume, connecting with people who are hiring, looking into teaching and training, something teaching and training related. So I don't know what you're considering doing, but I think with Saturn and the moon, you could do something that's going to be property management related, or you could say, hey, I want to get a degree in interior design, or I want to take an online course on, something kind of connected to real estate. Something along those lines are very doable right now. And it has to be something that feels good, that gives you that feeling where you have a balance between your home life and your career life, because you're like super boss lady with Moon Saturn in your 10th. Also, I'm not going to promise you that there isn't a potential that you actually get a raise or you get a bonus soon. That could happen when Venus conjuncts Jupiter in your 10th house. So that will be in August. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere yet. See what happens with that conjunction, because it could manifest as where you're getting some kind of recognition or there's a promotion. Obviously, if you want to change jobs, this would be the year to do it. And I think that you're going to get a lot of recognition or a lot of visibility. So if you want to be, changing your LinkedIn or going to interviews and stuff, definitely doing that in August and also in September can be good timing wise. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, well, with that being said, now I can add in all my other charts. Yeah, put yourself out there right around mid-August. Venus-Uranus is a good transit for that. It's okay, no worries. All right, I'm going to put in all my other people. So, Britney, Aaron, Astrid, Ariel, Juan, Kimberly, let's see, Rebecca, and the little Emerald. So if you heard your name, I've got you. Actually, I don't know why it's still pending, but it's still pending. So let me know if you see anything that changes on your part. If it doesn't go through, then I can just reimburse you, and hopefully I can do your reading for you next time. So give me about 5 minutes, guys. I got to put all these charts in so you can grab a snack, hang out, do whatever you need to do. For Aaron, I don't have all of your information, babe. I have you here January 8th, 95, 1:01 a.m., but I don't have a location. I also don't have a birth date for the person you want me to look at. There's a lot of missing info here, so you're gonna get bumped unless you send me that info. So I need to know at least your location, and I need to know their birthday. Rockville. November 15th, 94. Do you know time or location for him or no? Okay, you don't. Do you know the location? Thank you. All right. So we got Britney, we got Aaron. I think I have Astrid. We got Juan. Who else do we have? Kimberly. Rebecca.
right, guys. Sorry to keep you waiting. We had a lot of people. We are going to... Yeah, London, I can put your chart in, so if you want to cancel it, you can. Just add you in just in case that goes through. What's up, Rosie? All right, so I've got everybody in now, so we can kind of go through these a little bit more smoothly. We're going to start with Britney, and then we have Aaron, and then we have Astrid. Okay? All right, so for Britney, I have your info, but let me plug that in. And did you have a specific question? Holy Capricorn, Aquarius, Stellium, look at that. Okay, so Brittany says, I have you here January 31st, 1992, 7:32 a.m. Here's my question. I'm currently taking time off to focus on some long-term health issues that started around my Saturn return. Just wondering if there's anything significant you see in my current or upcoming transits, either career, health, or whatever you see. Thanks. Okay. Well, interesting that you say it's some stuff that came up during your Saturn return and now you're kind of dealing with it. So obviously I use Placidus, but you know, if this were a whole sign chart, I mean, any which way you slice it, you're a 12th houser. Whether you're looking at all the planets that are here Placidus or all the planets in Capricorn that are here whole sign, like it's interesting that now Saturn is coming into Aries and it's the ruler of all of those planets. And now it's physically manifesting with Saturn and Neptune in your first house still. That's like, oh, this is really really affected me. Like now with the retrogrades, you know, do I need to take the time to kind of work on my health? Saturn rules your ascendant, obviously. And like, what impact is it having on you in terms of your vision, your goals, right? And also like where you're drawing the line and you're having some boundaries with other people now. Whole sign third, so it's more mental stuff, more kind of communication stuff. But you are getting ready to have this Mercury retrograde in your 6th house. So it's good for like taking time off and like healing. Anyway, I think the other thing that I would really kind of focus on is the Uranus, you know, ingress. So Uranus is about to change, obviously, signs. It's going to go into Gemini. That's your modern day ruler. And it's going to be going into your, you know, whole sign 5th. So you're going to hear for Aquarius risings, you need like creative outlets, or you need an opportunity to be doing some creative writing or some journaling or some blogging or some podcasting or something that's going to give you an outlet to kind of just communicate and speak your mind. I'm not saying you have to be working per se, but that Uranus transit is going to be trining your Mercury. So mindfulness, breath work, you know, anything kind of meditation related, like journaling, that stuff's going to help. And I would need to see something, I would say, negative happening with either Uranus or happening with Saturn. The fact that Uranus is trining all your stuff doesn't really make me worry so much. It might mean that you're having to figure out how to kind of fill your free time with like hobbies and other things that are creative that make you feel fulfilled. I'm more concerned with Saturn and Neptune that are getting ready to turn retrograde in July. So when planets retrograde, we're reviewing and revising, revisiting what has and has not been working. And I think that it could just be like the mental drain when it's in Aries personally. It could also mean that you feel like you haven't really been so capable of having the energy or the wherewithal to like do the things that you want to do because maybe you feel like you've been putting off healing. Jupiter's going into your whole sign 6th house too. So that's going to be really good for focusing on health and wellness. Changes maybe to diet, health habits, and routines, and in particular emotional routines. Because Jupiter rules your 2nd house. So it might mean that there's new supplements, there's new practitioners you're working with, maybe you're focusing more on sleep. There could be some spiritual practices that you're incorporating, and anything revolving around taking care of like the emotional health seems to be like a huge focus.
And I think that you're kicking it off at like the best time. I mean, Mercury is about to turn retrograde over your Chiron. So it's like, okay, I'm switching directions. I'm taking a step back from working as much or doing as much because I'm focusing on healing. And it can be a time where, you know, you're checking in with your healthcare professionals or your therapists, your astrologers, your seventh house, and anybody who can be giving you some feedback on how to kind of get on the path of healing. Pluto is right on top of your Mercury too. So for me, that's kind of like, okay, therapy, anything revolving around breath work, breathing. There could also be some spiritual kind of practices that you're incorporating into your like mindfulness routine. That's really good for kind of grounding out your energy and like releasing the need to control things, at least in my opinion, because Pluto can be about control. I would really go and do my due diligence to do some research on Pluto's transit to your natal Mercury. And I think that the fact that you're listening to your intuition and your gut and you're like, no, I got to do something now, especially because it's your whole sign 8th. So it's like where you're letting go of being self-critical or how you're feeling bad about maybe, oh, I'm not being productive, I'm not working, you know, and you're not really letting yourself heal. You're not really letting yourself be present with that. This is the time to do it. Because in a couple of years' time, when Pluto comes into conjunction with your Saturn, which is one of your rulers, there could be some extreme underlying health or psychological issues if they're not dealt with prior. And then you're also going to see Pluto come into conjunction with your Sun, which is going to be shortly after that, still in a couple of years, but that'll be like, well, if you haven't dealt with it, is it creating relational issues or is it throwing you into a situation where now a relationship is faltering because you haven't been aware of some of the stuff that's kind of going on subconsciously or behind the scenes? 12th house is very much self-undoing. So when you have your chart ruler and the 12th house ruler in the 12th, it means like, you know, you can't just not work and stay in bed all the time. That might be something that you want to do, but you can't. Part of the transits are trying to get you into a routine that's going to be healthy. And I look at like Jupiter going into Cancer, where it's like you're cooking your food, you're learning about wellness, you're learning about like better emotional health. Maybe you're spending time with a pet or you're getting a pet, right? Jupiter in that 6th house can bring that opportunity. And you'll see in the fall when Jupiter's in Cancer trining Saturn in the North Node in Pisces, like you're going to feel, I think, more solid. You're going to feel better with yourself. You're going to be taking better care of yourself. I think you're going to be eating or sleeping better. And you may feel more inclined to be like, okay, I've taken a couple months off to kind of really be present with this. Now, how am I feeling? Do I feel ready? And you could be deciding if you actually want to get back into the swing of working in the fall, if that's something that you decide to do. But yeah, your homework is to go and learn about Pluto transit Mercury in the 12th. In particular, Mercury's connection to your 5th house of creative stuff, and also the connection to the 8th house of like healing, like art therapy could be like really wonderful for you. A lot of mental anguish that manifested physically with breathing pattern issues, and I think with Pluto Mercury, I'm finally getting to fixing it. Breath work, and also all that Aquarius. Look into like Rife machines, frequency healing, anything kind of connecting to like binaural beats. Like all like the frequencies and stuff that you can kind of listen to that can be really good for like physical and emotional healing. I think your body would respond very well to that, especially with Uranus that's coming into a trine with your Mercury and your Saturn. It can definitely be about changing the vibes revolving around what's going on at home and like being able to kind of heal any kind of past trauma or things that have been coming up in regards to emotions or home or stability. Sending lots of healing vibes your way, girl. Let us know what happens. All right, we've got Aaron. You're welcome. All right, so let's pull up Aaron here. So for you, Aaron, I have you here January 8th, 95 at 1:01 a.m. So you're Libra rising, Sun in Capricorn, Moon in Aries. And you've got questions about the Scorpio X. And it looks like, let me plug them in. We don't know their exact time, but the November 15th, 94. Okay. So Aaron says, a few weeks ago, I had a reading done about my Scorpio ex who has very strong Scorpio placements, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Pluto, and North Node in Scorpio. And his moon is in Aries, Saturn in Pisces, Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn. We were together for 15 years. As I mentioned before, our last contact was in December when I sent a heartfelt message and received a kind, open response, but I didn't reply. I reached out again mid-June, but this time there was no response. There's a large physical distance between us, but the emotional, energetic connection still feels incredibly strong. I've been having vivid dreams about him every night, and I can't shake the sense that there's unfinished business. I went to another astrologer recently, and he agreed there's a past life connection, but since he's so fixed that he may be stubborn with coming back. The relationship ended, like I previously mentioned, due to him feeling burnt out by our dynamic and me not moving in with him and getting married. Okay, I remember. Reading by you, I should add. Other people are acting selfishly, or they're kind of like out on their own, you know, doing their own thing, and you're like feeling that lack. I think all Libra placements, Libra risings, Libra suns, Libra moons, having Saturn in Aries also represents that separation and feeling that distance of partners. And for some people, they have, maybe it's always been there. Like maybe there's always been an issue in a relationship, but now they're more aware of it. For others, it's like now they're kind of recognizing and kind of seeing like a change in their relationship or their partners, where in the past they were more receptive or more willing to come around. Now they're not. And it's not just Saturn, which is going to be about boundaries, but it's also Neptune. So it's also going to represent, some of them are going to have like a goal or an agenda, something they're trying to accomplish, and then others are going to be just kind of like self-isolating, not wanting to take responsibility, not wanting to show up. So you add that into the mix with the fact that your 7th house ruler is retrograde natally. You just recently had your Mars return, so there's going to be some kind of buildup in energy revolving around relationships. You should be no stranger to having relationship dreams about other people with that placement. And you're getting ready to see Mars come into conjunction with the South Node, which I believe is probably going to give you a little bit more insight as to whether or not you guys are going to like actually reconnect. Now, it could be you have a dream about him around, you know, July 17th, 18th, 19th. It could be that, you know, he makes a reconnection. My thought is that for Libra rising, Mars conjunct the South Node is a lot of like, is that person really gone? Have I lost them? Are they coming back? Is there going to be a way for us to be able to connect and communicate? And then Mercury is going to be the ruler of that. So it can mean that there's something connecting to like social media or something connecting to a mutual friend that's giving you insight as to like where they are and what's happening. You need to have a really strong positive Mars transit for relationship stuff to happen. And like, honestly, it's not in the cards for Libra risings, as much as I hate to say that, for the better part of like the next 2 months. Between Mars and the South Node is like either having dreams about exes, realizing that current partners are being super shitty and very selfish and hiding things. Or it's going to materialize as there being some tumultuousness and some issues with like friends. Once you get past that opposition, Mars is then going to come into an opposition with Saturn. Once you get past that conjunction, sorry. And so then this is going to materialize for a lot of Libra risings. You know, Mars rules Saturn. So Saturn and Neptune basically represent whether or not you're having clarity in a relationship. They're both retrograde. You have none. They're still being kind of selfish and independent. And this is going to kick something into overdrive where Mars is moving through a debilitated sign and you're going to go, I'm not waiting for this person, you know, or I'm sick of the distance or waiting for him or feeling like, you know, I'm the one who's like waiting around for him to figure it out. Like now I'm going to figure it out, and you're going to feel like you're going to want to take some steps forward, whether that's reaching out to him and you being the one who's going to try to do it, or deciding that you're going to move on or that you're going to kind of like let him be. Not an easy aspect. And then you will have eclipses that are going to be kind of coming up with the South Node on your Mars. I mean, a lot of this is saying like there could still be a lot of dreaming about somebody, having some kind of disconnection, somebody being like far away. And look at your Mars in opposition to Saturn natally. Like when you're separate from people, you feel sad. So what it's trying to get you to do, because Mars is in the house of friendships, is it's also trying to get you to fill your cup with platonic relationships, friends, having a support system, people you talk to about separation and, you know, relationships and getting feedback, or maybe other people who have been there who can kind of talk to you and kind of help fill in the blanks. Like you can use the Mars transits to your advantage. And I think a lot of this is kind of similar to the Scorpio rising horoscope that's like going and reconnecting with friends and seeing people who you haven't seen in a while to kind of help smooth some of that stuff out so you're not feeling the heaviness of the relationship stuff. Uranus in opposition to your Venus too, shocking surprises, changes revolving around, relationships and stability and values. It's across the board. Yeah, he is stubborn if he has all that, Scorpio, and Venus rules his 7th, and Venus and Uranus are going through the 7th. So somebody's kind of like obviously inquiring about the relationship, or they're wondering what direction it's going to go in. He gets a brief reprieve when Uranus leaves Taurus here for the next couple of months. However, he still is going to have it retrograde and come back, roughly into opposition with his Pluto. So this is whether or not he's personally changing and evolving. Juno, if he's ready for partnership. And then it's still going to move on. And that's going to be happening for him like down the road. So that won't be until like spring of next year. So this guy's chart's cooked. It's like, and I've seen a lot of like Scorpio risings of Pluto and Scorpio as they've had the Uranus opposition over the 7 years. It's not a pretty transit, because they become so acutely aware through the back and forth and the on and off with a relationship that it can't just be the partners that are being crazy or the people who are kind of like being, impatient with them. A lot of it can be showing them through the impatience with partnerships and the on and off that, there's something that they need to kind of change. And like, he's got a first house telling him he's a Scorpio, but he's going to act like an Aries. So, being the boss of himself, the sun, Jupiter, his beliefs, his needs, his resources, Juno being tied to himself, and Pluto. This is somebody who over the last several years, has been kind of shaken up through relationship back and forth, where he was being shown, okay, he gave somebody an ultimatum. He was like, either you do this or we don't work or we're done. And that doesn't get him anywhere. Now Pluto's in a square with his Venus, which literally means a partner is trying to appeal to him and trying to communicate with him and either send him messages or call him, because it's at a 3, and he's reluctant to kind of come out of his shell. This has been a theme when Mars was retrograde. In opposition to that, you were going back and forth trying to communicate with him either at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, and then again just recently. Well, here's Mercury doing the same thing. So it does seem to imply that you may potentially try to reach out to him again, but that doesn't mean anything's going to change. Also, his Venus is at a 3. So I can't promise you that there isn't a potential of something going on where it's like, not only was he going away to get perspective and to kind of clear his mind and be like, okay, we're not going to be together, we're not going to live together, but that transit can bring in another person. I'm not going to say it will, but it can. And in the 12th house, it means that either you or he could find another person, okay? Because it's like a third wheel type of vibe. He's, like I said, he's still going to be in these oppositions until next year. So you can't really have too high expectations that everything is just going to be like, okay, we just kind of, get through this period and then it's going to be fine. No, I think you're going to keep having dreams about him. That's what I think. And I think if you're having those dreams about him, you have to find a way to kind of like clear out your space in your bedroom or do something to be like, you know what? Stop invading my astral space. Like, if you want to connect with me, you know how to get a hold of me, but like, I don't want to be having dreams about you and doing the back and forth with you. Your composite chart, Sag rising, Sag sun, moon in Aries. Wow. So it's pretty fiery. With Pluto squaring his sun from the opening side, it's more trying to get him to talk to somebody else. It's not so much about him being with somebody else. When he has the retrograde that's going to be happening down the road, maybe when Mercury retrogrades in November, he's more open to dating. But especially there's like a turning point like next fall for him, where there's going to be a Venus retrograde there, but I'm not seeing it right now. But your guys' composite chart is the Sag rising, moon in Aries. So you have to pay attention to Jupiter. Well, Uranus is in opposition to Jupiter. I mean, that could be enough for saying this is the final kind of breaking away, right? And that'll oppose several times, once now, and it's going to happen again at the beginning of the year. And your 7th house is ruled by Mercury, and Saturn and the North and the South Node have been squaring it. I kind of see this as like the window of opportunity is closing. Like, you either communicate over the summer, or there's not going to be a lot of communication probably until November. And then you're going to have an opportunity to reconnect in November when Mercury retrogrades over your guys' Sag placements. Maybe even see each other. That's possible. And then there will be another prominent transit, and that will be Saturn coming into conjunction with your guys' moon. But that's not going to be until 2027. I mean, you know, the truth is like with Saturn hitting the moon, trining the sun, it's like nothing is going to happen until you guys start communicating and talking again. And then it's going to be a situation where it's going to be like, well, why are we talking? What's the point? Unless somebody's willing to make a change in their living situation. And that's very obvious in his chart, and that's very obvious in your composite chart. He responded well, but it wasn't much. Why do you think he didn't respond? Because Pluto's squaring his Venus exactly at a 3. Yeah, and I think the thing is, you have to understand, like, as much as I hate to say this, you know, probably some of the worst placements to have is like Venus retrograde, Venus in the 12th, Venus in Scorpio. I mean, he's got, I don't like judging people's charts, because some people are going to kind of take that the wrong way, but that's a really hard placement to have. Venus conjunct Mercury. I mean, he's got all of those things. That literally means that there is like a back and forth that he does with partners and relationships, and he sees partners do it, and then he also needs to kind of go back and forth and like really think things through before he communicates and expresses his feelings, because he feels things so deeply. Venus and Scorpio are people who are used to being hurt. And also with like Venus retrograde, these men do not understand how women work. The way that they love, the way that they connect is very different. And so when he gets hurt, like a scorpion, he's going to go and look for a rock or a cave to hide in. So what's happening right now is Pluto is squaring it, which means he's learning how to communicate in a different way. He's feeling the pressure of needing to communicate. And the Mars retrograde is going to do that. I mean, the Mercury retrograde is going to do that too. You know? And if you guys have been together since you were 15, now you're 30, you're in your Saturn opposition. So a lot of this is like, this is what we've done for 15 years, you know? There's a reason why a lot of marriages kind of start to crumble around 7, 14, 15 years, you know, 21 years, 30 years, because these are the Saturn squares. So to me, it looks like what you guys are dealing with now that Saturn is kind of hanging out in like, you know, Pisces, Aries territory, is you guys got together when planets were going through Libra, and maybe, you know, or Libra or Virgo, maybe it worked back then, but now it's not working. And now it feels as if like, unless somebody is willing to make a change, nothing is going to like get better. His chart, and I probably told you this, like it reminds me a lot of like the Justin Bieber transits. Like Justin Bieber is going through like, you know, Saturn, Pisces, late Scorpio rising, Uranus in the 7th house. And obviously you're on the outside of that relationship, but you're seeing him kind of go through like his meltdown, or, you know, his period where it's clearly something's not well, and then questioning how that's working with the relationship dynamic. You know, yeah, Venus in Scorpio is very devoted, but when Pluto is squaring it, it basically means that now the relationship is being challenged very deeply because of his own mindset, the way that he's thinking. So he might be like, well, she's hurt me. You know, she didn't make that commitment to me. Like, she didn't come with me. Like, we're done. And like, he can be very rigid in his thinking, especially about relationships, Mercury conjunct Venus. And if anything, you know, in the 12th house, like that can also mean this is somebody who is incredibly protective and jealous and territorial of their partners. He may not admit that to you, but I'll guarantee you, I know enough 12th house Venus Scorpios to know that no matter what you see on the outside or lack of communication, these are going to be people who are going to be like really jealous, really worried, really concerned about you meeting or finding someone else. I'm not saying that's healthy, but he doesn't have the placements of somebody who's like really actively dating right now. You know, Jupiter's his dating planet, it's in the 8th. Venus is connected to relationships. It's being squared by Pluto. Things maybe start to open up for him, you know, a little bit in the fall when we're seeing the eclipses in September. But he's still going to have, you know, Uranus in opposition to Pluto. And I can tell you, like, any woman who's around him, right, because Uranus will be in his 7th house, will oppose his Pluto, which is going to be somebody going, I don't like the way you're talking. I don't like the way you're communicating. You're not communicating very well. You're not consistent, because it's at a Gemini degree. Or why do I feel like, you know, you're not kind of following up with me? And he's going to be like, well, I'm just still getting over my ex, you know, or I'm still thinking about her. Like there's something going on there. And it sounds kind of weird because you're like, well, wait a second. He's hung up on it, but he's also not calling me. Yeah, because he's super stubborn. like super stubborn, especially when it comes to communication, especially with Saturn being in the 4th house. This is somebody who will sit and kind of harbor feelings and think about the past rather than moving forward. So I'm hoping the Uranus-Pluto opposition can actually wake him up, make him realize you got to communicate. You can't just get stuck in the past. You can't just hold on to what happened. I would give him space. Yeah, I would. And I think that he may be a little bit better with communication, like when, you know, Mercury and Mars are coming into conjunction with his Venus. That's what I think. And after he has sat with this and he's thought about it for a while, then he's going to be a little bit more open. Unless you hear something in July with the Mercury retrograde, but I think that that implies that a person who's been reaching out to him is taking a step back, which I think you should. And then you'll see an opportunity where if he wants to reach or he wants to connect, wait until Mars is coming into conjunction with his Venus and his Mercury, end of September. And then you're going to have Mercury conjunct Venus, October. I think the longer this gets into the fall, the much more likelihood you have him coming around. Let him be. Let him be right now. Because I think that part of what's happening is he needs to really think about what he wants. And then when he does come back around and you communicate with him, be like, this back and forth, I'm not liking it. You know, like, let's just have the conversation and talk about what is it that hurt you so much. But at the time, what he was asking you to do, I mean, most likely you weren't going to be able to do it. You weren't going to be able to pack up and go where he wanted you to go, you know. Tough stuff. But certainly his chart was cooked the last couple of years with those Uranus transits. He's stubborn. All right, let's see. Who else do we have? So we have Astrid, Ariel, and Juan. You guys are all next. Make sure I've got the right Astrid here. June 14th. Yeah. Wow, you hear that owl? It's so loud. I can hear him hooing. Zach says, hey, got a reading for you in February about a career shift. You said around July is when I can start making money doing this thing, and I just got my first payout yesterday. Congratulations. I like to hear those stories. I love that. All right, Astrid says, hey, Candace, I'm ready to change jobs, and I would love insight into what's ahead. Are there any major transits happening now or the next 3 to 6 months relating to career changes and relationships? Well, which one do you want to know? Career changes is more connected to Venus. Relationships is much going to more be Venus-Uranus. My thought is what stands out more to me the most is definitely the Venus-Jupiter transit here. So Venus rules your career as a Taurus midheaven, and Jupiter is coming up on your Venus. Now that could be good for money, that could be good for love, that could be good for creativity, you know, working on things behind the scenes, but specifically that deals with your career. So there could be something brewing in the background where you're tapping into your own creative talents, you're coming up with new ideas or things that you're not ready to unveil yet, but you will be. And that's going to be the strongest, I would say, mid-July, let's say until about the end of August. And then Jupiter will retrograde, but when it does, it's not going to be conjunct your Venus. So it's the strongest basically now for the next 2 months. Personal, you know, relationships right now, a little cooked with Pluto sitting on your descendant, especially like the next month or two. Mercury retrograde in opposition to Pluto means there could be some difficulty communicating with people and getting an idea as to whether or not they're like open or receptive to relationships. And this can also be bringing up pretty significant or strong negotiations or talking to people about your values or your wants or your needs. And likely you're going to see some people who are going to resist this a little bit. So I'd be more focused on career personally. And sometimes when we see transits go through the 12th house, we feel deeply inspired or kind of called to listen to our intuition, listen to our gut, and take some time alone to kind of like work on things and like work through things. Jupiter represents other people's money. So it tells me that you may be kind of looking at, all right, you know, is there a possibility that I should be or could be looking for another job? Am I seeing what else is out there? Taking a look at the potential salaries? Yeah, I think so. I think that's what you're going to be doing. The other transit that's happening is Pluto is still squaring your midheaven. So through changes and transformations in how you connect with other people, it's impacting your status, your career, your relationships, and it's opposing your ascendant. So it's like sometimes you can deal with some really intense people during some of these transits that can kind of come up. And I would say, like, in terms of your career, something that really sticks out for me is probably going to be the eclipse that you're going to have on the 21st of September. So this will be a new moon solar eclipse in your money house, where you plant new seeds revolving around resources, believing in yourself, self-esteem, making more, right on top of your Mars. So it can prompt changes with home or living or travel or education, but it's going to trine Uranus in your 8th house of work, your 10th house of work. So that could mean that you're planting new seeds in regards to knowing your worth and like dramatically changing or transforming your career. That will also feature a square to your sun. So I think a lot of Geminis are going to be facing, potential changes that's kind of happening with work and home. And so I see your Gemini sun, and it's like home expenses might be changing in some way, but you're also gearing up to like have a very strong period where you feel incentivized to like produce more, make more, bring more money in. Best transit in a 12-year period, definitely. Venus conjunct Jupiter will enhance your work, but it's getting rid of or kind of finalizing or wrapping something else up. So if you're getting ready to change jobs, then my thought is, be really willing to kind of walk away from what you've been doing and embrace a completely different belief or philosophy about what you can be doing. And like, you may get like a nice private office out of it, or you might get a schedule that's going to be conducive to having more rest or relaxation, or, having the opportunity to kind of work at ease, because Jupiter and Venus is going to bring that ease. So you're not so like stressed out about stuff. And definitely look for like, I would say the full moon in Taurus. That could be another trigger that you're going to want to watch, because obviously it's going to be tied to your career. So that'll be around November 5th, 2025. Ruled by Venus, and it looks like Venus is going to be hanging out in Libra. So it's in its home sign in your 3rd. So communication with people at work, or getting feedback, or maybe there's going to be meetings or, opportunities to be doing some training or some traveling for work that can kind of pop up too. So those are going to be the most important times. But I think Jupiter in your 10th house Lord is like more of a focus on what's going on with work. The relationship stuff is going to be a little bit more tricky. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see. So that was Astrid. So we've got Ariel, Juan, and then Kimberly. What's up, Ariel? Another Scorpio rising. Let's see. July 27th, 91, 2:14 p.m. in Columbus. All right, last chart reading, you said, careful with online dating, and mentioned the South Node coming up on my Mars Venus around mid-July, April, it seems. And the transit looks like a new romantic partner that may start online or through travel, and then being a public figure, 10th house. Could you elaborate on the danger with my natal transits and aspects? All right, so basically, I'm just looking at what you wrote here. Coming up, South Node under Mars and Venus. So the South Node is a combination of, in some ways, like past karmic debt. So that could be good or bad. It could mean that if you've done positive things in the past, or there has been some sense of you mastering those lessons, you could be rewarded, connecting with karmic people, meeting with people, but it could also be something being removed or kind of pulled away, okay? So something you're gonna wanna watch is you're gonna have this transit twice, okay? So you're gonna have Venus coming into conjunction with the, transiting Venus coming into conjunction with the transiting South Node, transiting Mars coming into conjunction with the transiting South Node, and then the transiting South Node is gonna come into conjunction with your Venus and your Mars, and you're probably gonna see some of the same themes across the board. This is almost like a Sagittarius rising horoscope, right? Sag rising, South Node's going through the 10th house, Mars is there, changes with work, changes with your status, and that could be good. That means maybe if you've put in the work, it doesn't feel like it's so difficult, and now you're getting recognition, you're not having to fight for it, right? South Node Mars is like you're not having to be competitive in the workplace. But for Scorpio rising, it can mean that you're potentially connecting with people who you were friends with in the past, and maybe you're reevaluating whether or not there could be a romantic connection. You could be cutting friends off. I mean, there's a multitude of different ways of looking at it, right? I would say, being that you're ruled by Mars, it's going to be a little bit more prominent. And I think a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio risings are going to have an experience over the next month that's going to be like, this used to be the goal, or this used to be the group of friends I used to hang out with, or this used to be what I, was aiming for, and I don't want it anymore. For others, it's going to be, well, there was this person I was kind of involved with, and we were friends, but it was like complicated, and it could have been a relationship, but it wasn't. And then they come back around. So I always get kind of cautious with the South Node because it's really meant to be something that we release. It's not something we're holding on to. So it could be dangerous in a sense of getting involved with somebody that may not be consistent or may not stick around. I guess that's the word. But on the other hand, you're Mars. So it could be you being like, you know what? I want to get back out there and start socializing again, blah. And you might start doing that. Anyway, you're going to have Mars conjunct the South Node, and Mars transits kind of kick up a couple days before they hit. So it's going to be like right around, I would say, like the 17th of July through, let's say, the 22nd, 23rd. That's when Mars is conjunct the South Node. So something to think about is while this is happening, this is all ruled by Mercury, which is retrograding in your 9th. So to me, it looks like you might go, well, something's changing with my work schedule. Something's changing. I'm actually traveling, or I'm doing some training. Maybe I'm working with a new group of people. There's something going on with, the dynamic at work, because this is your whole sign 11th. But Mercury is not only connected to Mars, it's also connected to Uranus. So it's like, ooh, South Node Mars in the 10th house, that's more about changes with work and career and the financial shocks and surprises that brings. And then you being like, okay, well, I'm kind of redirecting my energy. It's less relationship oriented, in my opinion. It will become more relationship oriented when Venus comes into conjunction. So that's going to be down the road. And that'll be here. So this is early October, where your 7th house lord comes into conjunction with the South Node. And what I don't like is that both of them are happening at like 18 or 19 degrees. 18 degrees is like issues with coworkers, health problems, stuff not working out, scheduling issues. And then 19 degrees is more like relationship challenges and like being diplomatic. So around October 4th is when you see, 3rd or 4th is when you're going to see the South Node Venus transit. And that could be about somebody from the past coming back. Okay, so then you get a break. You will then see the South Node start coming into contact with your Mars in Virgo in the 10th. And I would refer back to some of the transits that were happening in July of this year, because it's going to be a similar transit. So it looks like that's going to start connecting around March of 2026. And then right after it's connecting to your Mars, actually it's closer to April, I take that back. Then it's going to conjunct your Venus. So April and May of 2026, you'll see the South Node hitting Venus, South Node hitting Venus, South Node hitting Mars. To me, this is more about like potential like relationships with people at work, as much as, I mean, it could be relationship oriented, sure, but that's more Venus. So when the South Node is hitting Venus, it's going to be at a 6, and that does deal with coworkers, work, and schedule. It's very possible that you have some job change stuff that's going to happen. And I would say that to any Scorpio rising, Saturn's going to go into your whole sign 6th house, Neptune's going to be there, Mars is going to be there. And something revolving around a change that you may potentially be making at work or connected to how you're working, where you're working, who your boss is, whatever, scheduling changes may connect and correlate to like a relationship change, if that makes sense. So I'd say be careful with online dating specifically. It has nothing to do with the South Node, Mars, Venus stuff. It has more to do with the fact that Pluto is conjunct Saturn in the 3rd, and Mercury is opposing it. And the 8th house is ruled by Mercury, which is crime. So I don't want to see a situation going on where you're like, oh, I'm meeting some guy, like in another city that I don't know. No. Or I'm flying to this place or that place. No. Just make sure you know who you're dealing with. That's my advice. And Venus is in retrograde, so things are okay in that sense. But you'll probably see more relational things come up when, you know, South Node is conjunct your Venus. Unless something happened recently with Mars conjunct your Venus, if you met anybody around like the 28th or 29th of June, because there was a conjunction here. But Mars doesn't, I've observed Mars doesn't do very well in Virgo. I don't know why. Yeah, I've been dealing with an online stalker. So stalking is Pluto, you know, and so with Pluto in the third house conjunct Saturn, it's like you going like, I'm taking my power back, I'm creating boundaries, Saturn, and like deciding who can and cannot see me or who I'm talking to or who I'm dealing with. And when Mercury retrogrades, it's going to oppose that, which means there's going to either be other apps or other forms or ways of people trying to connect or communicate with you. Unfortunately, that can happen. So be careful more with communication or going and like meeting people or like what information is like actually like, you know, like public. Pluto in opposition to your sun will do that too. You know, other people is Venus. And like when you got Venus conjunct Mars, people can be very, very, very passionate and very like adamant about like wanting to kind of connect with you. And I think as long as nobody like knows where you're working or coming into your work or your job, you know, that's more of how I would, you know, use this energy, and let this be a lesson. Like, you know, Saturn in opposition to your sun means that you keep certain people at like a certain distance. Like, you know, they only need to know what they need to know, what you feel comfortable sharing with them. And that's part of like your natal Saturn placement. They have all my info and hack my phone. Very third house, communication. As Mercury retrogrades over your sun, it may mean that, you know, you're going to be making changes revolving around like location services and other things revolving around like travel. So if you are making any travel plans or anything kind of connected to like locations, maps, addresses and stuff, just be careful with that during that retrograde. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, we've got Juan. What's up, Juan? Juan says, 6/6/1990, 4:49 a.m. in Fresno. He says, hey, Candace, I'm going through Pluto trining my ascendant and Uranus about to enter my sun ascendant and my Jupiter returning Cancer. How do I make the best of this energy and what energy should I focus on? Yeah, it's more related to work, Virgo. Work habits. So we've got good transits. First of all, trines are positive things. So I would not be stressed out about Pluto trining your ascendant, although Pluto is quite a heavy-hitting planet. I'd be more focused on being prepared for the Uranus on your ascendant transit. It's still a ways from your sun, so you've got some time. Maybe you start feeling it when Uranus is like around like 10 degrees. Okay, so when it's getting around 10 degrees, you'll start feeling the impact on your sun. But I think the fact that it's hitting your ascendant before it's hitting your sun is great because it's preparing you for some of the radical changes that are going to be happening. I use Placidus. So, you know, Uranus is very much connected to your career. So even though you're a Gemini rising, Uranus has some of the same themes and effects as what you would see with a Taurus rising chart. So part of what's going on is Pluto has been in and out of Aquarius now, you know, for the last like what, year and a half, almost 2 years. And Pluto represents for you, it's kind of like a blind spot because Pluto is intercepted through Scorpio in your 6th. So when you use Placidus housing system, sometimes signs get swallowed up and it means that it's harder to work with those signs and it's kind of like something that hits you out of left field. So traditionally for a Gemini rising, you know, Scorpio is the 6th house. It is ruled by Pluto, so it represents changes to your health, transformations to your workspace, changes revolving around coworkers, you know, your beliefs about service and like working through, I think a lot of work, emotional and psychological work. So when we see Pluto in a trine, it's harmonizing, which means it's bringing positive change. It's bringing change in a way that's enlightening. And the ascendant is kind of like the gateway to our chart. So what is Pluto going to do? Well, it could bring in a very powerful teacher. It could bring in a very powerful shift in regards to your belief about what you should be doing for work, what your schedule should be like, how you should be eating, what you believe in. And I've seen a lot of Gemini risings that have like really had this like kind of like epiphany regarding their health, and like they read an author that teaches them a lot about a health or a lifestyle change, or they meet like a fitness influencer or somebody who really teaches them how to like really change and transform their body and their habits. So the fact that it's in the 9th house, it's going to fall under the kind of more Sagittarius themes, change through travel, change through belief systems, whatever, education, and it's trining your ascendant. So travel can change you, right? There could be a really prominent author or a teacher or a mentor that could come in that could just radically change your beliefs about the world and how you can make a difference and how you can better communicate and learn and share and move around. Movement is good because the 1st, 5th, and 9th house, these are all like fire-based houses. So it's about movement, it's about creativity, it's about expression. And perhaps maybe through some of these shifts in your beliefs, it's changing the way that you communicate with other people. It's changing the way that you think. It's changing the way that you are with technology or learning or, language even, applications. I think particular teachers, authors, and apps can be really helpful when it comes to travel, communication, connection, and health. So those will all be things that can kind of help. I'm not worried about the trine. I'm more thinking about how Uranus is about to hit your ascendant, and your ascendant is at 0. So it's going to be the purest form. Like, things get really chaotic when planets are around like 29 degrees because it's wrapping something up. So if you think of like the 12th house, it's what you think about, it's what you dream about, it's what's kind of like hanging out in your mind, but things that don't really become visible. And Uranus can mean that there have been things you've been thinking about or learning or studying or practicing, but now you're going to kind of fly your freak flag and be more willing to be like, hey, I want to talk to you about astrology, right, Uranus? Or, hey, you know what, actually, I've been learning this new language, or, finding ways to be able to kind of connect and learn and communicate with people, and you'll be more open about it. It does have a number of other things, right? Like I always tell people, Uranus is like sticking your finger in a light socket. So when you have Uranus on your ascendant or on an angle or on a personal planet, our nervous system can be wound up quite tightly, and there can be a sense of there being different kind of frequency shifts and stuff going on with our body. So you'll be more susceptible, I think, to kind of getting overwhelmed or more sensitive maybe to certain frequencies. So like grounding mats, being outside, bare feet, or finding ways to be able to do some breath work. Obviously, Gemini, breathing, anything that can kind of calm you down and keep you grounded and help you feel like you're in control would be helpful. And watch for the new start. I mean, Mercury is very much governing what's going to happen with your chart anyway. So now is a good time to really be paying attention to Mercury now that you have Uranus in your sign. And when Uranus goes into Gemini, Mercury is actually getting ready to retrograde in Leo, and it's going to retrograde from your 4th house back into your 3rd. So spontaneous travel, spontaneous communication with family, changes revolving around vehicles, booking something too quickly and then being like, oh, I screwed up, can kind of happen. But this would be a good time to start some kind of breath work practice. Looks like the Mercury retrograde is going to go right over your South Node. So it's going to like represent changes in the way that you're kind of communicating. In the South Node and South Node in Leo could be about like some ego issues that are coming up with siblings or relatives or family members. I definitely think that it's a different era that we're coming into. A lot of fire and a lot of air means that things are going to spread very quickly. It's like wildfire. It's not like all this water stuff that we have had with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. And, when we had Pluto and Capricorn, it's very different. Now it's going to be like a cascade of, well, this is happening, which is affecting this, which is affecting this. So to get the bigger picture, you have to actually really look at what's going on with Saturn, because, Saturn and Pluto are all aspecting each other, and then Uranus is the last one. So you're traveling, you're learning, you're shifting your beliefs, you're connecting with new people because of that change in your belief or philosophy or what your goals are. So now suddenly you're getting active with people, you're making new friends, you're joining communities, which is in turn going to support this more kind of sense of freedom and authentic self-expression that you're going to have with Uranus in your 1st house. So traveling and learning, I think, are key. And then finally, you have your Jupiter return. And the Jupiter return is inherently good for the most part. Your Jupiter is actually far enough along in Cancer that it's not getting kind of triggered with some of the squares to Saturn. So, when any planet returns, you're playing with home field advantage. This is like a time where what you were born with, you can kind of navigate better because it feels familiar. So Jupiter in the 2nd house, a sense of abundance, but in a home sense, a family sense, a emotional sense, Jupiter, obviously, for you has a strong connection to your, I would say, professional goals. It's your whole sign 10th. Could it bring a new job, a higher salary, a bonus, a windfall? Sure. But it's also much more, I think, as an air sign in your rising chart, how you feel about the money that you make, how you feel in the job that you're, kind of doing. Do you feel good the way that you're making money? Do you feel like you should be paid more? Do you feel like you're kind of undervaluing yourself? Do you need to work on the self-esteem, right? So Jupiter's giving you the opportunity to do that. It's trining Pluto and the moon, which is really good for, I think, healthier habits and routines. And this could be how you're working, how you're spending money, how you're believing in yourself. All of those things kind of correlate. But the trines are friendly. In a couple of years, Pluto will sit on your north node. Uranus will be coming in conjunction with your sun. That's going to be another pretty wild turning point. But I like that the transits are opening up with trines, because I feel like that's going to help you kind of navigate this energy a little bit better. But certainly as you're getting into 2027, Pluto on the north node, Uranus coming into conjunction with your sun, you're going to be up for another kind of radical change. So enjoy this time while you have some of the trines. But even then, there's still going to be kind of an aspect to one another. So hopefully that's helpful. And I appreciate your kind words and your support. All right, we've got Kimberly. London years is still pending. I don't know what's going on, but maybe you canceled it. That's right. You sent it through Super Chat, so I'll get you. So we have Kimberly, London, and Rebecca. Okay, in that order. And thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. If you guys haven't already liked this stream, can you like it for me? I would really appreciate it. It does help the channel with its growth. I believe this is the right Kimberly. I just want to double check here. July 30th, 1960. There we go. What's up, Kimberly? All right, so Kimberly says, I'm really sensing accomplishment in my creative work at home when I approach it with a sense of joy and awe. So what do you see in my chart about ways to fully tap into these energies and blocks to take notice? It's my birthday month reading. Well, happy almost birthday to you. I love that you're talking about approaching things that you're creating with a sense of joy and appreciation, because that's really a huge theme in your chart right now. So Jupiter is your traditional ruler. It's now exalted in Cancer, and it's hanging out in your 4th house right now of the home. So maybe you've been focusing on what you're creating and what you're doing at home and what you love, but now it's getting ready to move into the 5th house, where projects actually take center stage. People can see them, they appreciate them more. It's a good transit, and it's also going to be conjuncting Mercury, which is going to be bringing up opportunity for you to have clientele if you're wanting to sell things or create a creative business, or if you're wanting to give feedback, or if you're wanting to get support from people, or if you want people to be talking about and kind of sharing in appreciation with what you're creating, right? So I love that. You're going to have Jupiter that's going to be in that house pretty much all year long. So it's not there yet, but maybe you're going to notice when Jupiter and Venus are moving into your 5th house. So this is going to be right around August 11th, 12th, 13th. That's going to be also quite a boost. And I think that Jupiter coming into conjunction with Mercury is really good for creative self-expression, things that you're talking about, really finding yourself in a constant state of being I want to talk about what I love. I want to talk about what inspires me. I want to share with people things that bring me joy. And so Mercury is very much sharing with other people. If you're not in a relationship, this is very much relationship oriented and bringing in people that you can then share that with. If you are in a relationship, it's going to be about the back and forth and the feedback you're getting from a partner. And having them also share in some of the things that you're creating and what makes you happy, and finding ways to do it together. Great for clients. So if you have clients, or if you're wanting to sell art, or if you're wanting to sell some of your creative, things, or you're wanting to share it with other people, there's definitely a sense here of being able to feel you're getting more recognition for what you're creating. So I'm not even gonna say you're making lemonade. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I really feel like the water signs, the rising sign water signs are really what are gonna benefit the most from these Jupiter transits, because it's gonna be making trines and aspects, and it's gonna be going through houses that are gonna be very much action oriented. Probably down the road when you see the eclipses, that's something else I would watch for. So the eclipse that you're gonna have here in Pisces around September 7th is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's right on your Mercury. Like, to me, it almost looks like, are you contemplating having an exhibit? Are you wanting to, put something on stage? Are you, making some big grand announcement? Because all eyes are going to be on you with the moon on your ascendant. Like, there's going to be something where people are going to be like, look at what I created. Look at what I put together. And people are going to be like, wow. And you're going to be like front and center. So it's a really good time to be sharing with people, what you're creating and what you're doing and what brings you joy, because I think it not only is it good for you, but it's inspiring other people. I'm not seeing blocks right now. Like, if there were blocks, there would be, hard aspects going on with your 5th house. Maybe, and this is maybe, the only thing I could say is that you are still in the midst, even though this is a good Jupiter transit, of Pluto squaring your moon. And the moon rules the 5th house of joy. So Pluto can come in, it can kind of create a little bit of like a squabble. And Pluto being in the 11th house of others, retrograde, means that there can be some weeding out of certain people who are very critical, or people who are jealous, or, are going to be kind of spiteful, or people who are going to be envious of what you're creating and what you're doing. And if you did not see that during the Mercury retrograde or the Mars retrograde, you should have, I would read this kind of like an Aries rising chart, where I would be like, look, you've got a lot of stuff kind of going on right now in your 4th and your 5th house, and your happiness, your home, your peace, and also what you're creating is the most important. So turn down the volume on, descending voices who are not approving of what you're doing, or people who are jealous. And be cautious and careful revolving around who you kind of have in your corner. Because at the end of the day, what you're making is what matters. Like, your happiness and your self-expression is what matters. Don't let other people kind of drown out your joy. And that could be things that are going on in the world. That could be friends, networking, social groups, family, whatever. But certainly Pluto can be a little bit of a stinker with this up and coming retrograde, and people can be kind of jealous. And then also Pluto squaring your moon is whether you're going to let other people's kind of toxic emotional tendencies or insecurities affect you. And I would be like, no, just brush it off. Just brush it off. Hopefully that's helpful. And I'm glad to hear that you're creating and you're thriving. That's so amazing. All right, I've got London, Rebecca, and then little Emerald. Thank you guys for your patience. All right, London, Libra rising, Sun in Aries, Moon in Gemini. You're very welcome. Haters gonna hate. All right, so London says, for my reading, my info and message with my question is still on PayPal. So let me go to that. Okay, so I'm currently in Phoenix. I have a question about the issue that started back in January, February of 2024. I was moving and I had to foster my cat temporarily since he gets stressed easily with moving. He's a Persian, very expensive breed, and also my emotional support animal. I had a woman reach out to offer to foster him, only to garner my trust by posing as a vet tech, and eventually ghosted me by the time I was ready to pick him up. She blocked me everywhere when I reached out to ask about the pickup arrangement, and I couldn't get a hold of her. By the time I had to drive to my parents' house in the other state, she faked a hospital emergency saying she had a kidney stone, so police told me to wait until I hear from her. Basically, it's been a year since I've been missing him, and no law firm or attorney would take my case seriously. Fast forward to now, and I have a new manager for my business who knew about the situation and got me. I can't see the rest of your message because it cuts off. Let me see. I'm trying to see if I can see it all, but it only shows me so much. So I'm going to assume, got in touch with somebody who's helping you with the process of getting your pet back. You can fill in the blanks for me if you want. That sucks. I would be really upset if that happened. a lot of this, so I think you said it was back in January, February 2024. So let's look at that. What was going on there? January, February of 2024. So Saturn and Neptune were in your whole sign 6. Missing animals, changes, transformations, or transitions, I guess I should say, with pets and also moving. And your natal Neptune is at a 14, and it squares the sun. Yeah, my business manager has a son-in-law paralegal that got some info for me to start the process to file a court date. Okay. So are you wondering when you should do that? I mean, you know, your sun squares Neptune. So issues revolving around other people's care and love when it comes to like your animals and movement and also support really comes up in that square. And it also looks like things have been panning out in a way, especially like March, April of this year, where you had retrogrades in the 6th that was like, oh, change jobs, or there's some stuff changing at work, where actually I have somebody that can kind of help me with the process of trying to get my pet back, Venus retrograde. I was trying to see if anything, yeah. So I think the last couple of months have been kind of like a revamping of, is this possible? Now you are going to have an eclipse in your 6th house, which is about pets. And that's going to be around September 7th. And sometimes Pisces represents lost things. And with that eclipse, Saturn is back there. So it can be, you know, a part of the eclipse of like a missing pet coming home. And it's going to trine Jupiter, which rules law and documents and paperwork, and it trines. In my opinion, this would actually be a really good time to start the process legally to hopefully get into a situation where you could be trying to go through like the legal channels in September. I would want this. And also, your Libra rising, Uranus is going into your 9th house. I mean, that means that you could have some really wild good luck when it comes to legal matters. And it's going to trine Pluto in the 4th house. So it's about returning and getting something back, retrograde, that's owed to you, and something coming back home. I would want things to be kind of lined up to be happening in September. That's just my opinion. And Saturn is only going to spend so much more time in your 6th house before it goes into Aries. So now that Saturn and Neptune are retrograding back, okay, I need to finalize something with a pet and then confront another person, Aries. This will be much harder to do next year. So if there is like a delay or a stall, once Saturn is coming up on your sun and it's starting to square Neptune and Uranus, and it's also starting to square Jupiter, whether because it's changes going on with the people you work with, maybe they're going to different departments, maybe there's some job changes or some things that happen, do not wait, because it will be much harder for you to actually try to go through the process of getting the pet back with Saturn on your sun. Because other people are going to be acting kind of crazy and kind of erratic. Also, like, there could be issues and challenges trying to like physically locate somebody. Do you have like all communication like between you and this person prior to like arranging, you know, her doing a temporary foster, where it was like understood like, hey, like this is going to be a temporary thing. I'm going to be coming back and getting, you know, the cat once I'm done moving. Like, you need to have that paper trail. Because, you know, Uranus going into Gemini is going to be about, the luck is going to be dependent on the documents. And you'll have another retrograde that's going to be bringing up legal matters and having to show legal documentation and paperwork about getting something back. And that'll be happening in November. So I'm hoping if you can get everything done, you can have something on the docket, you know, if not in September, then sometime in November. And you can use the Mercury retrograde to your advantage, where you could go, okay, well, you know, Mercury's going retrograde mid-November, and that's about something that was missing, Virgo pets, that could potentially come back. And it's going to trine Saturn and Neptune pets. It's also going to trine Jupiter, which could be about legal decisions based off of documents and paperwork. So September through to November is when you want to get this going. And you want to do it before Saturn and Neptune leave Pisces, which is going to be the beginning of next year. Right. I hope you find your cat backs. Definitely, like, what is it? Who's the patron saint of missing things? I always forget his name. I should know that. Or Saint Expedite. But particularly, I would say, like, because Pisces is not just pets, but it's like offerings, you know, saint worship, anything like that. Like, go look up who that patron saint is. But that can be helpful for helping return the animal. Cats are also connected to the sun. So Saturn coming into conjunction with your sun, debilitated Saturn, it's going to be much harder to get cat next year. That person may be potentially difficult to kind of like locate or maybe trying to move. So definitely get on it this year. I hope that you're able to get your kitty back. I would burn somebody's house to the ground if they took my pet. You were so like, you know, you got a strategy. You're cool, calm, and collected about it. So I like that. All right, we have Rebecca, and then we have little Emerald. So let's pull up Rebecca. St. Anthony, thank you. That's who you wanna petition. Go and see what kind of offering he wants, especially with some of your transits. That might really help. All right, so Rebecca, 8/11/93, 5:30 a.m. Brandywine, Maryland. Leo rising, Sun in Leo, Moon in Taurus. Working towards my spouse visa with my husband in the UK. I'm currently an American federal employee, and I just want to know how my future is looking. What to keep an eye on. Well, as a Leo rising, your home is going to be connected to Mars or the 4th house, Scorpio. So Mars and Pluto transits really impact you. You've got your natal Mars in Virgo, where you're going to have an eclipse, which could literally deal with possession of documents. So off the top of my head, I would be really looking at the September 21st, 2025, give or take a little bit on each side. Solar eclipses bring action, and it's critical. It's like, we need to do this now. And it's going to be right on top of your Mars with a Mercury Cazimi. So it looks like the process of actually starting of like really being like, okay, we're going through the paperwork, we're going through the motions, we're doing interviews, whatever we got to do, is going to start closer to the end of September. Actual, you know, living situation also has some kind of ties to Venus, and Venus is in the 2nd house. It's fallen, but still it's able to kind of help you start the process. You might have to pay to expedite something. Foreign lands is connected to the 12th. So something else that's kind of coming up is Jupiter is about to conjunct Venus. So that could mean that there is opportunity, as silly as it sounds, through either a new work opportunity. Jupiter rules the 5th house of children. So this could also mean that there's potential pregnancy energy. So you've been forewarned. I could see that actually happening in the end of July, especially with the Mercury retrograde. I could also see that happening in mid-November going into December. But Jupiter represents pregnancy and babies, and Venus is the home. Like, it's basically saying there's something that's coming in that would kind of anchor you a little bit more to living or being in a foreign land. Jupiter could also represent investments and paying like somebody for legal counsel to help expedite the process, which you could consider doing. What else? And then I am looking at down the road when Uranus is retrograde back on your moon. Not only do you want to be looking at potential job stuff and how that's impacting where you're living, but it's at a 27. So it means that you could go back and forth revolving around, do I want to work here or do I want to work there? And now that Jupiter is really close to your Venus, it could be presenting you with the opportunity to like transfer or potentially work in another place. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you could. I think with Mercury retrograde in opposition to Pluto, there's going to be a back and forth revolving around how you're managing and handling finances over like the next like month or two. So that could be a little challenging in terms of communicating with a partner or communicating even like expenses or budgeting or anything connected to work. So be mindful of how you're communicating with people, because there could definitely be some like resistance to change. And I would say probably get prepared for the kickoff to be in September with that eclipse to start the process of expediting it, and probably even in doing it because you guys might be filing certain documents, you might be paying for something to kind of get the show on the road. That eclipse will also oppose Saturn, so that means that you're going to go, okay, I have to do it. It's going to be things I have to fill out, things I have to seek out, things I have to kind of push for, and things that your husband may not necessarily be able to do. It's going to be stuff that you're going to have to be applying for. Unless you see like a really gnarly Mars aspect, you're not really going to see anything change with your work. And if anything, I think this could open up the door for you being able to have transfers to other departments. Thank you. Trying to sell my house. I talked to my mom about moving in with her temporary. Lots of moving parts. Oh, okay. There you go. I see you now. Feels like divine timing. I had one hell of a year with 4 major deaths since November. Work up peoples and navigating long distance with my husband and ready for us to be together. So you guys aren't even together. So that's the Mercury-Pluto opposition then. So if that's the case, then Jupiter coming into conjunction with Venus is probably going to be being able to kind of like see him, even if it's temporary. Especially July 26th through mid-August, there could be a window. And then my thought is probably when, let's see, the moon represents foreign lands. So probably Uranus retrograde on your moon is probably when you're looking like getting a little bit more situated somewhere. So that's looking like towards the end of the year. Oh, you're flying over in August for your birthday. Okay, good time. Good time for traveling then. But I would be looking at, Uranus retrograde over your moon. So like kind of December-ish. And there's going to be more of a focus on being able to be with a partner. Saturn is going to represent your husband. And what's happening is Uranus is squaring Saturn. So there's so much stuff going on both with work and home that you're like, I can't actually be with him. But once you start getting planets sextiling Saturn from the end of the year on, I would assume there's more togetherness. But you may be exploring other options. And then eclipses are going to start happening in February. So I would almost expect that you're going to be spending time and you're going to be very much around him. You got an eclipse February of next year right on your Saturn. It means you guys are together. But that squares Pluto and also the moon. So something's got to give. It's almost like, what's going on? Is it a job change, or is it going to be some kind of like legal paperwork that's going through that's making it possible for you to actually be there, right? And Mercury in opposition to your Pluto. Oh, that's so difficult for finding ways to be able to connect, with your partner. But I'm glad you're going to go and see him. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Becca. I don't really see anything changing with your job right now, but watch for like budgeting stuff with Uranus over your moon. Budgeting cuts and things like that will happen. You'll hear about that in November. All right, so we have, last but not least, Jacqueline. You're welcome. Let's see. 10/25/79. I think I gotta add her in here. October 25th, 1979, 5:44 p.m. I did do that. And I left them like notes for like a week, and I had demands, and they were not happy. All right, so Jacqueline, I have you here, Aries rising, sun in Scorpio, moon in Sagittarius. She says, I just had a hysterectomy, still having back pain, which was the reason I had the surgery in the first place. Surgery was 4/28 of this year, and I just started physical therapy today. I hope it helps with the back pain. See anything significant in the chart that points to some answers. Yeah, I think one of them would probably be the fact that you have Chiron on your ascendant right now, which is definitely Not an easy or a fun transit. It does manifest as becoming acutely aware of pain and things that you need to heal, and anything revolving around your personal healing journey. Surgeries, cutting, inflammation, anything kind of connected to that can be a theme with Chiron and Aries, as it's ruled by Mars. Mars is also your chart ruler. So if we think about what's happened in recent months, you had a Mars retrograde that was going on. You had equally a Mercury retrograde that's coming in, that's going to be over your Mars, and that's about feeling like you can be active again and whether or not you're feeling like you can experience joy. Eclipses in your 6th house, which started in March, which was bringing up health-related matters. South node on your Saturn, which is bringing up some kind of heavy karmic burden revolving around organization, health, healing. Pluto squaring your Sun, which can sometimes make you feel a little disempowered throughout that transit. And now you have Mars getting ready to go into your 6th house, where a lot of Aries and Aries risings are going to be kind of like kicking ass and being like, all right, it's time to actually feel like I'm moving again. And the nice thing is that Virgo is about help or support. So nurses, rehab, specialists, herbalists, like people who can kind of help you, kind of physically make the necessary changes so you're feeling better. So you're kind of getting it from all angles, to be honest with you. Just having Pluto square your Sun would be a year that I'd be like, yeah, there's definitely going to be some stuff that's going to come up that's going to be challenging, and it's making you feel like you rely on other people or that you need assistance from other people, but it's not in a relationship sense. It's supposed to be like in a physical, like health sense. Yeah, so it looks like you got the surgery on 4/28. So you got the surgery when Mars was in opposition to Pluto. Not my favorite date, but nevertheless, I think that because that was the date of when you did it, look at where the Sun was. The Sun was squaring Pluto and it was squaring Mars. I mean, I get it. You felt like you needed to take care of something. You needed to heal something. Leo is also the back, by the way. And it looks like that square was like, okay, well, I can't continue to sit here and be in pain and not feel like I have any control. So the reason why I bring this up is because Pluto's retrograding at this degree. Okay? Uranus is sitting conjunct these degrees where the moon and Uranus is. Mercury retrograde is going to retrograde over this degree. So what I like is that Mercury is going to retrograde over the Mars degree. So it means that it's actually saying, okay, she did the surgery. Now we're getting in there. We're going to rehab her. We're going to see what we can do to actually make her feel more mobile and like the impact that that's going to have on her feeling better. My thought is like, look, you got Mars in Leo natally. You need like infrared, like red light therapy, red light sauna, get a red light panel, something that can be helping like the healing process, because you can do a lot when it comes to heat or even acupuncture or anything that's going to be stimulating circulation during this transit. Warming herbs and things that are also going to kind of like heat the body up. Maybe oils and balms can be helpful. And then you'll be out of the South Node Saturn transit here pretty soon. Granted, you're still going to have a Virgo eclipse in your 6th house. But it'll be, at 29 degrees. So it'll be fully in the 6th and it'll oppose Saturn and Neptune. Like, the tricky thing about having the North Node in Saturn in your 12th, is that this is highlighting rest, recuperation, and time away. A lot of Aries risings have been telling me, oh, I feel so depressed, I can't leave the house, or I'm dealing with health issues, and I'm by myself, and I can't get out of bed, I can't do anything. And I'm like, but that's part of the process. Yes, you can take the medication, you can get the surgeries, you can work with the doctors, you can do the physical therapy, but part of what's coming up with the Pisces stuff in the 12th house is like, massage, aromatherapy, emotional therapy, Reiki, healing beds, frequency healing, any Eastern modalities are going to help. That's very Pisces. And also praying, meditating, fasting, giving offerings, to your ancestors or the spirit realm. I mean, I know this sounds like really kooky stuff. But the way to get out of the health habits and the issues, especially with the South Node there, is to go into the North Node. So you had your surgery when Venus was conjunct Saturn in Pisces at 29 degrees. So Saturn and Neptune are going to retrograde. So that tells me maybe you get a little bit more active over the next month or so, but you're going to spend the next several months realizing, okay, I had a health issue that manifested because of emotions I didn't deal with, or because, I have just been working through the pain, or maybe there are things that I have not become conscious of that I've been compartmentalizing or kind of putting away, and like now my body is crying out. So what do I need to do to be more mindful of what my spirit body or my emotional body is trying to tell me, so I'm not doing this again? Right? At least that would be like my interpretation. Pluto square your sun also just really challenges you, revolving around feeling like you're in control, or that you can be working, or that you have some sense of like authority out in the world. And it does show you like where it can be a little bit more difficult when it comes to receiving support from romantic relationships, in my opinion. So I'd be curious what has happened with some of these squares, because Mars has been squaring your sun, Pluto's been squaring your sun. Shit. I mean, that's just, that's a lot all at one time. And then not to mention the Saturn Neptune square your moon, where there's also a lot of like, okay, what am I learning about the time that I'm spending alone kind of by myself? And I've seen over the last several months, probably 24 Aries risings that are like, I broke my foot, now I can't get out of bed, or I have like this issue that's keeping me in the hospital, like a story from everybody. And I keep having to tell everybody, what is the lesson? What's going on? You can go through all the motions of the 6th house of eating well and taking care of your health and doing all those things, but the emotions that are kind of going on subconsciously, or even what you're absorbing, from the collective, has an impact on you. Look into anything relating to heat, okay? So saunas, dry saunas, infrared, cupping, massages, acupuncture even. I mean, because Aries does have a connection to Mars, which could be needles, and things that can kind of help the body recover. And Scorpio placements are notorious. You have Scorpio Sun, Venus, Uranus, Mercury. I mean, they're notorious for having major reproductive issues, hormonal issues, things revolving around, all of the reproductive organs is Scorpio, and sometimes even the bowels. So I would be very careful revolving around anything connected to like synthetic hormones. Like, I'm not a doctor, okay, but I'd be very cautious with that, especially knowing that you're going to have for the next year or so Chiron on your ascendant, and it's going to inconjunct and quincunx all of this. Just trying to kind of restabilize the body through synthetic hormones or something it's not the only solution. It's not the only answer. A lot of this is going to be about how you can be working with alternative medicine, or you can be working with like an acupuncturist, or even like an herbalist, to find natural ways to kind of balance out some of this hormonal stuff. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight. Definitely watch 2 new moons that are going to be in Virgo, and eclipses. One of them will be an eclipse, and then Mars going through there. The Mars-Saturn transit's going to be a time that you don't want to push yourself too much. So take it easy and don't like overdo it. July 19th through the 28th. That period is like, you don't throw yourself back in the gym or anything like that. Okay. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful. Sending you lots of healing vibes, and thank you, all of you guys, for joining me on Thursday night. I know for some of you guys it's still a school night, so I'll be back next Friday. I hope you guys, if you're enjoying, if you're celebrating 4th of July, have a happy, healthy, safe 4th of July. Enjoy yourselves. Catch me back here on Sunday. We'll be doing astro weather. We're going to talk about Uranus going into Gemini, so there's definitely things popping off all week, not just fireworks. If you guys want to see more about me and my work, if you'd like to learn how to read astrology, I have beginners astrology classes. I also offer private one-on-one sessions, and I have digital calendars. So click the links below, head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter, and I hope to see you guys on one of my future lives. Until next time, I'll catch you all very soon. Take care.